Hello designers, in this video I'll give you a beginner-friendly walkthrough of Affinity version 3's Pixel Studio, which is great for photo editing and digital painting. I'll cover almost all the tools so you understand what they do and how to use them. Let's begin. So you've just opened up Affinity version 3 and you're greeted with this welcome screen. Now this welcome screen is exactly the same one that was in my previous tutorial called Beginner's Guide to Affinity version 3 Vector Studio. And this is the Vector Studio at the top left there. If you haven't seen it, go ahead and watch it. This is where I teach you how to use the Vector Studio, how to use the tools and all of that. But in this tutorial, we're going to be concentrating on the Pixel Studio. And that's a great place to start editing photos or creating your digital art, think painting and drawing. So this welcome screen here is basically where you'll choose the photo that you'll start editing, or it's where you'll set up a document so you can start painting or even dragging photos onto that document. So right now it's under Home, okay? And Home is basically a collection of all the rest of these headings up here. So you've got your recent documents, you can just go ahead and select them and keep working on them. You've got your favorites, I'll show you how I got that there later on. And my presets, some presets that I've set up because I like to work with that size. And right underneath you have some tutorials from Affinity. So if I just cycle through them, of course there's my recents, there's some tutorials from Affinity, there's some templates, I haven't set any up yet, and there's my favorites, okay? So I'll just go back home for now. What if you just wanted to start editing just one photo? Well, you go up here. This is the file and just click on open. You can see it opens up your file system on your computer. So from here, you would just go ahead and select an image, click open, and we're ready to start editing. But what if you wanted to create a document and then you wanted to drag photos onto it and maybe make some art, paint something? Well, I'm going to show you how to do that. So head back up to the Affinity logo there. That's our home, by the way. And from here, we can go to this green plus icon, new. Click on that. Okay, on the left-hand side, you basically have a bunch of presets. And they're all in different sizes and color formats. They're all slightly different, but they're broken down into categories like photo, canvases, video, and web. So you would just choose whichever preset you like the most. So if I go down to here and click on it, FHD 1080p, I always choose this one in my tutorials, but right now it's in portrait. If I want it in landscape, I go up to preset orientation and just click on landscape and it switches it over. And if you notice there is a little star next to it, that's how I made it my favorite. So if I go to Quad HD 1440 and I click on the star, and now if I go back to my home, you'll see that I have a new favorite in there. So that's how you do that. So I'll just go back to plus again and I'll uncheck that. So FHD 1080p, I've selected it and all of the settings that relate to that are over on the right hand side. So that's how it's set up as the preset. But you can go ahead and change any of these settings and then go ahead and create document. So let's just run through a few of the settings here. So document units, pixels, you can have it in inches, feet, whatever you want. DPI, dots per inch, right now it's on 72 because it's good for screens, right? And less for print. I can whack that up to 300 if I wanted it more for a printable document. We can also change the width and height just here, and you can change the color format. So right now it's good for screens, it's RGB. We can go ahead and select CMYK if we want it to be better for print. And if you want your document to start off with a transparent background, simply toggle this one on. And underneath is artboards. If you want multiple canvases in one document, you would go ahead and select that. That was in my previous tutorial, Beginner's Guide to Affinity version 3 Vector Studio. So if you haven't seen that, go ahead and watch it. And then we have image placement. This one is quite important. This is basically how Affinity handles images in your document. So right now it's on Prefer Embedded, okay? So let's imagine we create a document, FHD 1080p, and then we drag 10 images onto it. Affinity will consider those 10 images as being part of the Affinity document. And it will mean that the Affinity document size might be quite big. And the more we drag on there, it might get absolutely huge. But with this one, whether you have them on your computer or not, it won't matter because they'll be contained in the Affinity document. So if you delete the actual original one on your computer, it won't affect your Affinity document. Those images will still be in there. If we switch over to Prefer Linked, this one will make the Affinity size a lot smaller, and instead of being embedded into the Affinity file, those photos will be considered still somewhere on your computer. So let's say one day you delete those photos on your computer and you go back to your Affinity file to continue editing it. Those photos will no longer be there and you'll be prompted to go and find them to link them up again, okay? So to be safe for now, I'm just going to click on Prefer Embedded. And some of the other settings here, like multi-page, are for when you're creating a book, a document, a brochure, more for when you're using the Layout Studio. Same thing for margins and bleed. And underneath you have drawing scale, more for people who work at specific scales, maybe architects, things like that. Okay, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to go ahead and click on Create Document. But actually, before I do that, I'll show you how to create a preset. So right now it's on 1920 by 1080 pixels. If I just go ahead and change that to, let's say 2000 by 2000, I could just go up here, name this test, and click on Create Preset. So I've created it, and you see there's a test now under My Presets. If I go back to the home, you'll see under My Presets, I have a new one called Test, okay? If I go back to New, I could just simply right click on it and press Delete if I no longer want that as a preset. Okay, I'll just go back to our preset again, and we'll click on Create Document. So we have our new document set up. It's 1920 by 1080 pixels, but like I told you before, you can change the document settings at any point. So if you look up here in the context toolbar, it says Document Setup. Click on that, and then this pop-up box opens. You can make any changes you want, and then press OK. Now, I'm going to explain the user interface to you in just a moment, but before I do that, I want to show you how to add images to your document. So there's 3 ways that I want to show you how to do this. One of them is just to go to wherever your file is on your computer. Let's say it's on your desktop, and you can just click and drag whatever image it is. Mine is a JPEG, here it is. I'm just dragging this off of my desktop, and I can just let go like this. And you see this pop-up box appear. It says your document contains a large amount of embedded image data. Would you like to link your images to reduce the document size? Now that's what we were talking about earlier, embedded versus linked. I'm just going to say no for now. And you see it's a very big image. So if I just use my trackpad to zoom out, you can see it's huge, and I can just scale inwards like this. If I hold down Command and scale, it scales from the center. Now we're going to be getting more into how to manipulate the size of your photo later, but right now we're just adding the photos to our document. So I'll just place it there. So that's the first way, just dragging and dropping from your desktop or your file system somewhere on your computer. The second way is to go up here to File and then Place. And then your file system opens up again, and you can choose one of your pictures. So there's another JPEG. I'll just click Open. And from here, you see we have this strange icon pointing down into a hole. And from here, I could just click and drag, and there's my next photo. So the third way is to use the Place tool. So on the left-hand side, it is not present. Now I'm going to get into all of this later, but just for now, we're going to add the Place tool to the side here because Affinity is very customizable. So I'll just show you how to do that now. Right click down here and then go to Customize Tools. And then up here, just type in PLACE, and there's the Place tool here. So I'm just going to click it and drag it and drop it into my tools. And I'll press X there. And now with the Place tool, I'll just simply tap it once. And again, my file system is open and I can choose a different image. I'll select this JPEG, click Open, and just click and drag, and there's the next image. One more way that you could do this, on your file system, you could just select the JPEG that you want, or the image, press Command C, that's going to copy it. I'll just do that now. I'll press Command C, and then on your document, you just press Command V. And you see there is our photo, quite big, so I'll just scale that down a little bit. So there's a few ways of adding images to your document. Before we move on, I'll just delete this extra Place tool icon on the left-hand side. I'll just right-click, Customize Tools, and I'll just click and drag that off, and it's gone. So if you haven't noticed already, we have a couple of tabs up here, and I can switch between them just by selecting either. So I'm just going to delete this one for now. You see it says Untitled M. That means I haven't saved it. So remember, when you open a document, you start working on it, you've got to save it. Otherwise, perhaps your computer can crash and you'll lose everything. But for now, I will delete this document that we've created. And I'll click Don't Save. And this is the first image we opened up. We will stick to this one for now, whilst I explain the user interface. So we will go ahead and save it now. So File, Save As, And then here I will just name it. So I'll just name it tutorial and I'll just save it to my desktop and click save. Okay, in this section, I want to cover the user interface, the UI. If you haven't used Affinity before, you may be a little bit confused about what you're looking at. What are all these icons and tabs and areas? What do they do? So before I get into that, you'll probably notice that it's switched over to Vector Studio when we are actually concentrating on Pixel Studio. That's because I've set up Affinity to always open up in Vector Studio because that's the one I use the most. So I'll just switch over to Pixel Studio now. So this area in the center here, think of this as your canvas. This is where you'll start painting your digital art or editing your photos. And to start painting or editing, you'll need tools. So all of your tools are on the left-hand side here. Think of this as your pencil case. And inside your pencil case, you might have a paintbrush, you might have a pen, and an eraser. So notice as I select each one of these tools, just above the photo here in this area, the options change. This is basically called the context toolbar. And the options in here all relate to the tool you have selected. So right now I have the paintbrush tool selected and I'm given more options in the context toolbar. Basically, these options allow me to tweak how the paintbrush performs. So I might want to make a bigger paintbrush up here by changing these values. I might want to make it slightly softer or even use a stabilizer. And each tool has different options that relate to that tool. And on the right hand side, we have our studio. And this is basically a group of panels. And it usually contains color. So let's say if you were painting, you might want to change the color of the paintbrush. You choose that here. You've got your histogram. When you're editing photos, you can see a visual representation of the tonal values. And underneath, we have a few more panels. One of them is layers. So right now, we have one photo in our document. But if I was to add another one, I'm just going to drag this JPEG on top. You can see we now have 2 layers here. And if I started painting on top of these with the paintbrush, you'd see another layer for that paintbrush stroke. Let me just delete that image. And you also have channels and brushes. Maybe you want to choose a certain paintbrush. And you have stock. I'm going to be going through all of these in this tutorial, but this is just so you get to know and understand what you're actually looking at here. Underneath here, you have more options. You've got layer effects, you've got masking with mask layer, you've got filters, and you've got adjustments, okay? So that's the studio panel. And right at the top here, we have our toolbar. And right now it's displaying information that's related to the image. So you can see that I used the Pixel 8 Pro to take this photo and it's just got the dimensions, etc. And we even have a snapping up here and little export option. So at the top toolbar here, it usually displays quick actions. If I just switch over to Vector Studio, you can see there's different options up here. Transform, maybe I want to flip horizontal, flip vertical. So in each studio, you get different options, okay? So that's the basics of the user interface. Okay, in this section, I just want to cover what studios are. It's this bunch of icons at the top here. And notice as I cycle through each of them, the tools change, the panels change on the right-hand side in that studio area, the toolbar options change at the top. Basically, think of studios as different workspaces for different workflows. So if you're more into creating vector graphics, you would choose the Vector Studio. You see, all the tools are related to vector. And of course, if we switch to Pixel Studio, this is more for photo editing, digital painting. Think Photoshop and raster or pixel-based image editing. And you choose layout if you're going to create a book or a magazine or a brochure, basically page layouts. Think InDesign. And Canva AI is another studio where you can create images using artificial intelligence. But we're not just limited to these studios here. If you click on the 3 dots here, you can see this is our studio manager. So some of them are toggled on, the ones that are actually showing, and we have a few that aren't. So there's Slice Studio. There's my very own studio there that I've created. And we have a few more studios that are related to photo editing. So one of them is retouching, and watch what happens when I toggle it on. It appears up there with our studios. I can click on color grading and compositing. And you see there's a few more there. So if I just go ahead to retouching, you can see we have different options. So if you're retouching a photo, then this is the one that you would use. If you're color grading, you have more options. Look on the right-hand side, you have a scope and you've got that histogram still there. And on the left-hand side, you've got quick adjustments and it almost looks like a different app, doesn't it? So let me just go ahead and toggle these off again. And we'll just stick with whatever is stock with Affinity. So you can see you have a load of different options to choose how you work. But the great thing about Affinity is that it's very, very customizable. So you can actually create a studio that is a big mix of all of these: vector, pixel, layout. You can actually create your very own app. So I'll just quickly show you how to do that. So you click on the three dots here and you click on Create Studio. And we get this pop-up box here. So you just name your studio. I'll just name it Test. So where it says clone from Pixel, basically that's the Pixel Studio. All of the tools and panels that are related to that, you'll clone from that as a starting point. You can add an image here so that you can recognize your studio slightly faster, and you can just choose a color of your choice. Let's go for a green one, and you can choose your studio icon. If you want, you can actually choose your very own photo, so you could just click on that image there, and you can go ahead and click on Create. So now you see we have a test studio, and you can create your very own Frankenstein kind of app that's specific for your exact workflow. And I'll just quickly show you how to add tools and change the UI to suit you best. This is probably more for advanced users when you get used to using this program, but I'll just show you now so you understand what Studios can do for you. So on the left-hand side, we have our tools. If I want to customize it, I just right-click, go to Customize Tools. Sorry about those shortcuts there. That's just so you know what I'm doing. So if I press a shortcut or I click a button, you'll see what I'm doing, okay? So I can click on Customize Tools, and up here in this drop-down menu, I can choose what kind of tools I want. So maybe I want to start with the photo kind of tools. It will show me all of them here, and I could just click and drag them in. I'll just go on All Tools. You see I can cycle through which ones do I want. Perhaps I want a lighting tool. Let's just do that. So I'll click and drag that over and into my tools, and now it's there. So you can customize this as much as you want. You can drag off any icons that you no longer want. I'll just quickly drag that out again. So that's how you customize the tools on the left. If you want to customize the studio on the right hand side, just click on the drop down menu, click Panels over here, and you can toggle on or off any of the panels that will help you. And I'll just close that down. And in the toolbar at the top here, there's not a lot there, is there? I'll right click and click on Customize Toolbar. And maybe this one would be useful if you want to flip a photo horizontally, or maybe you want to align one. If you've got a few photos on your document, you can add these. So how you add them is just click and drag and drop them like that. And if you no longer want it, just click and drag off and let go. So that's how you create your very own studio. Now I'll just go ahead and delete it. So I'll click the three buttons here, and then I'll right click on our test studio and click on delete. And by the way, before I delete it, if you really like the studio that you've made, you can export it and you can actually share it with friends or work colleagues or whatever. Okay, let's go ahead and delete it. So we have our image set up and we're finally ready to start editing it. So in this section, I'm going to show you 3 ways of making basic adjustments to your image or photo. The first one is underneath layers. You see here? Right underneath there is an icon called Adjustments. If you click on it once, you can see we have lots of options here. I'll start off by just selecting brightness/contrast. And watch what happens when I do that. So I'm going to select it now, and you can see I have this pop-up box here, and I have a new layer in the layers panel. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so we can see what's happening to the image. And I'll just click and drag on the brightness slider up to where I think it's okay, and let go. Now I'll do the same with contrast. I'll just up that a little bit to make it a little bit more punchy. And once I'm done, I can just select the X button there. Okay, so from here, don't think that there's no way of going back. This is all non-destructive. So that edit, that adjustment we just did is not baked into your photo. It's purely just another layer in the layers panel. So if I go to this eye symbol over here, I can toggle that on and off. So if I just click now once, you can see what it looked like before, tap it again, you can see what it looks like afterwards. And if you feel like you want to edit further, just select the icon here, and this box will open up again and you can make further amendments. If you want to delete it entirely, you can just press delete on your keyboard and it's completely gone. If you feel like you've made a mistake and you want to go back one step or undo, just press Command Z or Control Z on a Windows computer. So this is really cool. It's non-destructive. You can make as many adjustments as you want and it won't ruin the original image. Okay, let's apply a couple more. So I'll go back down to Adjustments, and I'll go to white balance. And again, we have another box here and we have another layer. So in fact, maybe I'll just make that a little bit cooler. just a little bit, and I'll just leave it at that. And I'll just add one more. I'll go back down to adjustments and go to HSL. And that is hue, saturation, and luminosity. So from here, I could just select that circle on the left. That's for the whole image to be saturated a little bit more. So I'll go to saturation shift and just drag that up a little bit. And you can saturate individual portions of your image depending on what color they are just by selecting each of these colors here. And you can go ahead and drag the sliders up or down. So that's the basics of the adjustments. That's the first way of doing it. So like I said, we can delete all of those. So I'll just go ahead and press delete to get rid of all of those adjustments. And now I'll show you the second way of doing it. So the second way to make basic adjustments is to use the quick adjustments panel. And that is not visible right now. So we're going to go up to window, go to general, and then go to quick adjustments. And I'll click on that. And now we have this new panel here, which we can have just floating around if we want, or we can drag it over here to the right-hand side and let go. And you see now it's up here. I can drag it out whenever I want. I can even nest it in between these two here. There we go. It's now between them, and I can play around with it as much as I want, but I'll just drag it out for now. So you can see here, it's very quick to add these, and watch what happens when I do it. So we'll just play with the brightness again. I'll just drag that up slightly. And you see in the layers panel, it's automatically added that new layer within the image. You see this little drop down arrow here. It's kind of nested inside of there. And if I go ahead and drag that down on the brightness to 0 and let go, it automatically deletes it, which is pretty cool. So I'll just up that brightness and we'll go a little bit of contrast. And you see now that I've added the contrast, it's still brightness / contrast. But if I go ahead and up the saturation, you see a new layer has appeared in the layers panel. We have HSL shift and the white balance. Maybe I want to make it a little bit cooler. Now we have a white balance adjustment layer. So that's the second way of doing it. I will just get rid of that box by pressing the X, and I'll delete all of those adjustments by just selecting them and pressing delete. And the third way of making basic adjustments is to use the adjustments panel. And how we get that to show is we go up to window, we go down to pixel, and then we go to adjustment. And you see it's been automatically added over here in the studio, so I can select that and just drag it out. So from me showing you these 3 ways of doing it, you can see why you might want to create your very own studio to have these panels always in your workspace. Perhaps you'd want to kind of like dock them in here so they're always available for you every time you edit a photo. But this will become more evident to you the more you use the program. So let's go ahead and do the same things again. I'll just start off with white balance. I'll click on that, and you see now, let me just drag that down to reveal more. There's lots of options in this one. Now I have a few kind of like presets. So I've got warm, cool. I just click on the preset that I want, and this pop-up box appears just like it did before. So let's just go to default, and I can make any adjustments I want. Let me make it a little bit cooler. And again, look in the layers panel, white balance adjustment has been added. Let's go to brightness and contrast again. So I'll click on that, and maybe I will just choose one of these presets, lighter. And even though I've applied the preset, I can go ahead and edit it a little bit further. You can see it's added the layer there. And again, I can go to HSL, and I can choose maybe just saturate. Just one tap and it's done, and it's added the new layer to the layers panel. And again, I can go ahead and edit it more if I want. Then I'll press the X and get rid of all of those, and it's done. So I'll just delete all of those adjustments again, and we're back to our original image. That's 3 ways of adding basic adjustments to your image. When learning a new piece of software or app, sometimes it's hard to remember everything that you've learned. So if you ever get stuck, go ahead and tap on the question mark in the top right-hand corner and you'll get some help. So when I tap on it, you see it opens up this box here, and basically you can ask any question here, and this artificial intelligence version of Ritson will help you. So this is extremely useful. So go ahead and use that. Also, there is a help tab as well, and there's loads of topics you can browse by, or just type something in here and then it will pop up. So definitely use that. Okay, let's start going through the tools on the left-hand side so you understand what they are and what they do. Starting off with the Move tool, and this is the cursor that you see here. Basically, this one will allow you to scale, rotate, and select objects. So let's just get started. I'm going to click on the top left, and scale down. I'm just dragging with the trackpad, and you can see it scales to the bottom right there, this edge. And if I do the opposing side, you can see it scales up to the top left side. And if I go ahead and hold down Command, click and drag, it will scale from the center like that. And there's a little handle up there letting me know that I can rotate it like this. And if I hold down Shift, I just hold down Shift on the keyboard, you can see I can rotate in 15-degree increments, just like that. And if I just grab the side here and just click and drag inwards, you see it scales from that side. But if I include the Shift key, so I hold down Shift, click and drag, see I can kind of squash it in. And I'll just press Command Z to get it back to proportions. And I do the same with the top. You see what happens. Holding down Shift and just clicking and dragging down. And if I click and hold this corner here whilst holding Control on the keyboard, click and hold Control, you see it kind of rotates from that top left edge. And you know what will happen if we do it from any other edge. Let's do it now. There we go. It rotates from the opposing side. And what I'm going to do now is just drag in another image. So I'm just dragging it from my desktop and letting go. You can see we have two images here now. So I'm going to use this just for selecting whatever's on my canvas. So you see here, London Lines is on the top in the layers panel. And if I want it to be underneath, I can just click and drag it underneath, let go. And now you see this image is over the top of that London image back there. And there's a few shortcuts that you can use, by the way. So right now, London Lines is selected. I can hold Command and right bracket key, and it will bring it to the top. I can hold Command and left bracket key, and it will take it down to the bottom. So that's the basics of the Move tool. Shortcut for that one is V. Remember that because you'll be using it a lot. So if you didn't already notice, when we selected the Move tool, this box appeared. This is basically called your subtools. And every time you select one of these shapes that has a little arrow next to it, so let's just select that one, it reveals whatever else is inside. So alternatively, I can long press, and then it will show what's inside, and then I can select whatever I want and then release, and it will choose that one. If you don't like these subtools appearing, look, you can even dock them in certain places. If you don't want these appearing every time you select a tool, you can just right click and go to Hide Subtools. So now whenever we select one of the tools, nothing will appear, but if you long press, you'll see the tools appear. I will keep the subtools on for now though. And the next tool I'm going to show you is the Perspective tools, just under the Move tool here. Perform a 4-point perspective transformation. And before I go ahead and do that, I'm just going to scale down my image here because I've sneakily placed another image underneath of a billboard. So this is where you might want to use that tool. So to start off with, I'm just going to scale it down till it kind of matches up with that billboard. Of course, the aspect ratio is completely wrong, but we'll work with it anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and select the Perspective tool. Select that, and we've got this box here with more options for us, and you can see the image now has 4 dots on the corners. I'll call these nodes, and basically I can go ahead and click on Show Grid, and this might help us a little bit more when lining everything up. So I'll just click and drag this up and let go, and I'll do the same with the bottom here as well. And the reason it's kind of going so well here is, you see it's kind of snapping, isn't it, into place. Why is it doing that? Well, it's snapping to the node above there. And the reason that is happening is because I have snapping turned on. So at the top there, you'll see a magnetic icon. That is snapping. It's toggled on right now. And if I click on the little arrow next to it, you can see all of the options. There's so many of them: snap to grid, snap to guides, snap to object bounds. I've just left it as it was default, so you can play around with that to help you with this live perspective, okay? If I didn't have that on, I'll just toggle it off. You can see as I move this around, it's not snapping to anything. So we don't want that. So let's click on snapping, toggle that on and go back. And there we go. So I'll just toggle off of Show Grid and get rid of that box. And it's done. Even though it's not exactly the right size, this is where you might want to use this tool. Moving on. The next tool I want to show you is the Mesh Warp tool. So I have my photo selected, and I'm going to go ahead and select Mesh Warp tool. And again, we have these 4 nodes on the corners. And this time I can click and drag in, and you can see it's slightly different. This time we have handles, and we can click and drag these handles wherever we want, either handle there. And you can do this with all 4 corners, and it's not moving around like the Perspective tool was. And the cool thing with this is you can actually add more to the mesh here. So if I click on the side here, you see I've added an another line here, and if I click again at the top here, I've added another line. So now I've got a node in the middle here that I can play around with. And you see I can play with that and you get that kind of nice smooth warping. And at the top here in the context toolbar, you have more options. So right now it's kind of a smooth node because you can see it's kind of smoothly doing that, but I can convert it to a sharp node. So I'm going to click on that. You can see now the handles have gone and this one has a handle. So when I do that, you can see it just comes to kind of a sharp end there. And I'll just select this one. So you can get very creative with this one. Of course, you can go ahead and hide that mesh with the button in the context toolbar. And you can also go to destination and then source. That's what it looked like before. You can kind of switch between them, destination. And I'll just go ahead and reset that so it's back to normal. But just know that when you do this, it is destructive. It isn't a filter on top. So once you're done with that, you can't really go back from it. So I'm going to click apply and you can see now we still just have one layer. And if I wanted to go back, I cannot unless I press Command Z. So I'll press Command Z now and we're back to our original image. The next tool I want to show you is the Deform tool. And here it is just on the left hand side, just underneath the Move tool. We're going to select it and we've got this box that pops up, this panel. And when I click up and down on this, nothing really happens. The way to get it to work is to place a few dots. So with your Move tool, you just click once, twice, 3 times. You can add as many as you want. And I'll just click and drag like that on one of the dots. And you can see how it kind of transforms. You can drag it pretty much anywhere you want. So I'll just drag this all the way over here and I'll just drag that there. And now with the panel, I'm going to drag down the master. And as I drag it down, it kind of returns to its original form, which is pretty cool. So there's a couple of different constraints here. Right now it's on rigid. So let me just click and drag like this, left and right. And I'll switch to similarity. And I'll click and drag the same one again. And you can see as I drag left and right, it scales a lot more when I'm using this. So you can choose which one you want to use. And right underneath there, there is split view. So if I click on that, you can see a before and after there. So I can click and drag this so I can see the before and the after. And once you're done with it, you can click on apply and it's complete. Now this is destructive. There's no way to go back unless you pressed Command Z. That's undo. So we'll go ahead and do that. Command Z or Control Z on a PC Windows machine, and we're done. That's the Deform tool. The next tool I want to show you is a tool that every photographer uses, and that is the Crop tool. Shortcut for this one is C. So when I go ahead and select it, you can see the image now has these kind of nodes around it, and it has a grid. And this is the thirds grid. So if we look in the context toolbar at the options that we have, right now it's on unconstrained. So if I click and drag this around, you can see it's not constrained at all. And I can click and select and kind of place it around wherever I want it to be. And then I can click apply. Okay, so I'll just click and drag it back to where it was. You can see it's snapping in place. And that is because I have my snapping turned on at the top right up there, just like I was showing you earlier. So I'll just bring it back to normal. And the next one is original ratio. So when I select that, of course, we have our original aspect ratio of the photo, and that's all great. The next one is custom ratio, where you can enter the exact values right here. And we have resample as well, where you can choose the exact pixels, whether you want it to be points, inches, etc. And dots per inch, you can change that. So I'll just put it back to original ratio there. And these little icons here, these little sliders, these are all presets. So if I click on that, you see it gives us quite a few here, 1:1, 2:1 aspect ratio. Lots of them are available, so you can just kind of select them and continue. Another useful option is this one up here. This is rotate, so maybe you want to crop it more of a portrait mode like this. I'll just click it again to reset it. And we've got straighten. So you can see that this isn't completely straight. So if I go ahead and click on that, and I'll just zoom in a little bit more, see we have our leveler here now. So I'm just going to click once here. I'm holding down. I'm going to drag it to the end there. And that looks pretty good. I'll let go, and you see it's kind of straightened it, hasn't it? If I wanted to make this completely kind of rectangular, I could go ahead and use that perspective tool that we were using earlier. And you see the grid that's over it, that's a thirds grid, so you can just cycle through to the golden spiral, diagonals, and V grid. And each of these grids will help you with your composition. And we also have darken border over here. So if I just drag that in a little bit, you can see we have a darker border. And if I uncheck that, it's not dark anymore. And this one here, reveal canvas. You see there's a little kind of line that's revealing where our canvas is, if it's kind of hidden. And you can go ahead and click that button again. And once you're all done, you can go ahead and crop the image however you like. So I'll just bring it in and click on apply. Now, if I didn't like that, I could just go back to the crop tool and you can see it's still all there and I could just bring it out to wherever I want. Okay. I'm going to press Command Z to go back to our original state. And the next tool I'm going to show you is the Object Selection tool. So over on the left-hand side, you can see it says select areas of pixel layers using machine learning. So in order to use this, you need to download a machine learning model. And I'll show you how to do it now. So we're in the Move tool and go up to the context toolbar and click on App Settings. Once you've clicked on that, you'll see Machine Learning down here in the list. And you'll see under here, it says Segmentation. Now this one, you just need to click Install. And once that's installed, you're ready to use that tool. So I'll just click the X on that to get rid of it. And I'll go over and select Object Selection tool. You can see we have a few options in the context toolbar, but before I do anything, what I'm going to do is select our image. Just select it from the Layers panel for now. And I'll zoom in. And you can see as I hover over, it seems to know the individual objects by highlighting them, no matter what I'm touching, which is pretty cool. So let's just go ahead and select this one here. I don't know what this is. I think it's some kind of cheese. It tasted good anyway. So I'll just select it once and you can see there's like a marching ants around it. So it's kind of selected that. And because multi-part object is on, I can go ahead and select further portions of the photo, but I'll just leave it on this for now. So what if I wanted to make just this portion here much brighter? Well, I could go over here and click on adjustments, click on that, and then go to brightness. And I'll just click and drag up brightness. And you see, I'm just making this portion here brighter than the rest, which is pretty cool. And I'll get rid of that. If I was finished, I could just press Command D and that gets rid of those marching ants, or Control D on a Windows. So I'll press that and now that's just brighter. And you can see in the Layers panel, we now have a new layer called Brightness/Contrast Adjustment. And there's our mask that we created using the Object Selection tool. If I don't want that anymore, I can just delete it, or if I just want to see what it looks like without it, I can toggle the eye on and off like that. So let me just press Command Z until it's gone back to before I added that adjustment. And what I'm going to do now, that's still selected with the marching ants. I'm going to go up to Pixel, Pixel Selection, and then Invert. You see there's a little shortcut there, but I'll just click Invert. And now when I zoom out, the marching ants are all around the side here. So we'll just go ahead and add that adjustment again. So I'll click on it, Brightness and Contrast, and this time I'll just bring it down. So you see now it's darkening everything around that cheese or whatever it is. That's pretty cool, isn't it? I'll just press Command D to get rid of the marching ants. And there we go. So if I no longer wanted that anymore, I could just go to the Layers panel here. You see there it is, and I could delete it. So I've shown you how to select one object. Let's select a few now because multi-part objects is on. So I'll just select that first one again, and then I'll hover over the next one and I'll select that. And maybe I'll select a few over here as well. A few of these gherkins here. And if I wanted to remove this selection over here, I could just go up to the context toolbar, click on Subtract, and then hover over this one that I no longer need anymore, and just click. You see, as I move up and down, it kind of includes more in there. So I'll just click once, and you see it's removed it. I just click again to get rid of those extra little marching ants. And that's done. So you can see how these different modes can help you when making your selections. And of course, soft edges is on. And if you uncheck that, when we apply our adjustments, it might be a little bit more sharp on the edges. So I'll just press Command D again. And we'll just select this same object again, and this time we will click on Refine. Now I'm not going to get super into this because it's getting a little bit advanced for a beginner's guide, but here's a box. This is your Refine selection, and you can see everything in red kind of won't be selected. Everything that isn't will be. So our marching ants will be around this shape here. So first of all, is everything selected that we want? It doesn't look like it quite there, does it? So we can use this one here, Adjustment Brush Matte, to just paint over the edges, and be sure to include part of the object you want to select and part of the background that you don't want to select. and let go. And you see it does a pretty good job of differentiating between what you want and what you don't want just from the kind of outline. So if we consider this object here as our foreground, if we click the foreground button here, you can paint out. Imagine it was coming out a little bit more there. Let go. It includes more of the foreground here. If you want to consider this part of the chopping board the background, you click on background here and you'd paint over that. You don't have to go all the way to the edge. It kind of knows. So if I let go here, see it creeps forward a little bit and I'll paint a little bit more, creeps forward a little bit more, and maybe I can use the matte again here. And there we go, that's done a really good job, hasn't it? So another thing you can use is the preview up here. If you switch to black matte, it will show nothing but the object and everything else will be a black background. So this can be helpful for when trying to not include certain things in your selection. So I could go to background here and I could just paint over that and let go. You see it kind of creeps forward. You can change the brush size here by tapping the left bracket key to make it smaller or right bracket key to make it bigger. And also you have all of these other options here. Border width, I can click and drag this up. You see it's showing how much of a border width you kind of want to include in your selection. Maybe you don't want it that big, maybe a little bit less, and let go. And smooth, how smooth do you want it? I'll just whack it up so you can see what this does. Oh, there we go. That's quite a lot there. So we do not want that. So that's why I kind of just leave that off. You can feather the edges as well. I'll just whack it up. And you've also got ramp. So if I whack that up, it will ramp outwards to include more. And vice versa, if you bring the ramp all the way down, it will include less. And the output is selection. And you can also output to a mask. So anyway, that's the basics of it. And we'll get more into this later on. I'll just click apply. And this is our selection done. If I want, I could just copy that. So copy and paste, Command C, Command V. And now I'll switch to the move tool and I could just bring out my copy like this. I'll just press Command D to get rid of those marching ants. And maybe I want 2 on that board, or maybe a mini one, a really mini one. There we go. Okay, moving on. The next tool we'll cover is the selection brush tool. And it's another way of making selections. So the shortcut for this one is W. So I'm going to go ahead and select it. You can see I have a crosshair here, which means that the brush is kind of small. So to increase the size of that, we're just going to press the right bracket key on our keyboard and increase the size. You can see in the context toolbar, you can also change it here, width. That's for your brush width. So let's just zoom into these grapes here. Right now it's kind of large, and if I click and try and make my selection, it includes quite a lot. You see, I could just go here and it just starts increasingly selecting parts that I haven't chosen yet. So we don't want that. So let's go ahead and press Command D to deselect what we've selected already. And we'll just make the brush smaller. I'll press the left bracket key here. And let's just zoom into one of the grapes, okay? So I'll make my selection now that the brush is smaller. And you see what happened there? It's kind of like magnetically attracted to the edges, and that's because Snap to Edges is on in the context toolbar. So I'll continue to make my selection, and you see sometimes the brush is still a little bit too big and it includes areas that you might not want. I just want this one grape. So one way to get rid of those extra areas is to go up to Mode and just click on Subtract. So I'm going to click on that and I'll just start deleting those areas like that. If I go back up and click on Add, which is what we were on originally, I don't actually have to keep going up there. A shortcut for this one is just to hold the Option or Alt button on the keyboard and just click and paint away like that. So very easy. We've made our selection. I'm going to make another duplicate of that grape. So I'm going to press Command J and it's made a duplicate, as you can see in the Layers panel. And I'll press V, the Move tool. And now I can just move this wherever I want. Maybe I can just add another grape in there. I'll press on Command D to deselect that marching ants. And it's done. There it is. We've got an extra grape there and no one will ever know. The next tool we're going to cover is the Flood Select tool. The shortcut for this one is W on the keyboard, and this one basically allows you to select pixels of a similar color. So I'm just going to go ahead and select it. And just take note that the tolerance level is 12% in the context toolbar. So to test this out, I will just click once on this white piece of cheese here. So I've just selected once and it's just selected this portion here, nothing more. If I go ahead and up the tolerance, and I'll just press Command D to deselect that and we'll try again. I'll click once again and it's included more of it. Another way to do it is just press Command D to deselect that. It's just to click and drag. And the more you drag, the more it will select. And if it hasn't selected the full amount that you want, you could just try again, just click and drag more and more until it includes more of it. And if you want to refine your selection, of course, you can go up to refine and do that like I showed you just now, or you can switch over to the selection brush tool. So what are these two options up here? Contiguous and anti-alias. Basically, anti-alias smooths out jagged edges. So if that wasn't selected, your selection down here might be a little bit more jagged than it is right now. And contiguous limits the selection of connected pixels. So if we just uncheck that and we try again, I'll just press Command D and I'll just click once. You see it's selected a lot more, and all of these pieces that it's selected are the lightest parts of the image. You see there, that's the light part, that's a light part. You can see what it's doing here, okay? And that's all based on the tolerance. So up here is the tolerance, it's on 36. If I just press Command D and I just bring that down again, and I select the cheese once more, it will select less, but all still very similar colors are being selected, or brightness, I should say. Okay, I'll just go ahead and select contiguous again, if that's how you say it. And I'll just press Command D and let's move on. The next tool I want to show you is the Marquee tool, and it basically allows you to draw a rectangular pixel selection. In fact, there is more than just a rectangle. There's an elliptical one, there's a column and a row one too. And also there's a freehand selection tool, which we'll get to, but for now we'll just concentrate on one of these shapes. We'll choose the elliptical marquee tool. So I've selected it and I'm just going to zoom into this jam here, or marmalade, and I will just click and drag out. Right now you can see it's kind of like an egg shape. To maintain proportions, you can just hold down the Command key and just drag out, and it keeps that perfect circle. And I'll let go. If you've made a mistake, don't worry, you can just drag this selection wherever you want and just lay it down round about there. So from here you can do a few things which I'll show you now. So one of them being, maybe you just want to duplicate it like we did with the grape earlier. So I can press Command J and that's made a duplicate, as you can see in the layers panel on the right hand side. So I'll switch over to the move tool with V and I'll just click and drag it around and place it somewhere else. Maybe I want to make it slightly smaller and drag it there. That would be ridiculous, so let's go on to the other option. So I'll just press Command Z a couple of times. I still have my selection. Another thing you can do is just press delete. So I can press delete on the keyboard, but this is a destructive edit. As you can see in the layers panel, there are no mask layers or anything like that. So the only way to go back and undo this action is to press Command Z, which we'll do now. Another thing you can do is create a mask layer. So we have our selection, we can go underneath the layers. This little icon here, it says mask layer. So when I click on it, you can see it's basically deleted everything around the jam or marmalade, and it's just kept the marmalade there. So if I just press Command D just to deselect those marching ants, you can see in the layers panel that we actually have a mask layer, and there's a little white dot there. That's our mask, and I can click on it and I can just drag it somewhere else. Maybe I want to concentrate on the cheese or the crackers, but I'll just leave it there for now, back to where it belongs. And this is a non-destructive edit, meaning that if I delete this mask layer, we're back to our original image. Another thing you can do, I'll just go back a couple of steps with Command Z. Okay, there we go. We still have our selection. It's just to invert the pixel selection. Right now, it's just selecting the jam. But if I want to select everything outside of that jam jar, I just go up to Pixel, Pixel Selection, and Invert. You see the shortcut there? Shift, Command, and I. You can use that as well. So you see now we have the marching ants around, and I can go back to Mask Layer and click it, and it looks exactly like when we just deleted it, but instead now we have a mask layer. And again, you can press Command D to deselect that, and you can just move this around. Okay? It's completely non-destructive, so in fact, if I don't want this, I could just go to the mask layer and press delete, and we're back to our original image again. We'll get into masking a little bit more later. And finally, I'll just show you that we can add an adjustment, so I'll press Command Z a few times. And just like we did before, go to the adjustments icon, click on it. You can add some brightness if you want. I'm just choosing the simple ones just to show you. See, this is happening right now because I pressed Command Z only a couple of times, so it's still kind of selecting everything outside of the jam. So I'll just press Command Z a couple of times till it's only selecting the jam. There we go. Click on Adjustments, go back to Brightness and Contrast, and click and drag that up. And now you see we have a brighter marmalade or jam. And I'll press delete on that. Also, you have a load of live filter layers. So just right next to adjustments, you see this icon here, filters it's called. They're kind of live filters, and there's lots of them to choose from. You've got Gaussian blur, bloom, lots of them. So I'll just choose a different one, maybe ripple. And you see you've got this crazy kind of effect going on that you can just drag this slider. Let me drag it up here. You can drag this slider to make the changes you want. Pretty cool, isn't it? So I can just go ahead and delete that because it's non-destructive and press Command D and we're back to our original image. Okay, let's move on. The next tool I'm going to show you is the freehand selection tool. Just this one here. Shortcut is L on the keyboard. So I'll go ahead and select it. And you see in the context toolbar, you have a few options here. So we'll start off with this one here, which is freehand. So I'll just go ahead and make the selection again. So if I click and hold down, you can see it's kind of freehand like drawing. So lots of mistakes can be made, but it may come in handy for some of you. Okay. And then you just draw it all the way to the end. And now you've got your marching ants. You've made your selection. I'll press Command D and we'll try with the other option, which is polygonal. And I'll just select it. And with this one, you just draw straight lines. So perhaps we're selecting this chopping board here, but there's no smooth corners. So you see, this is the kind of selection you're going to be having. You just click and there's no curved lines at all. So good for kind of square elements on your page. And again, I can just go all the way to the end and now I have my selection. So I'll press Command D again to deselect that and we'll choose the last one, which is magnetic. So if I click on that, it basically acts like a magnet. So I'll just start off here. I'll click once and now I'll let go. And as I drag around, you see it's kind of magnetically attracted to the outside of this jar. It's not perfect, as you can see, but if it wasn't such a busy image, it would work better. So there we go. I've messed up a little bit there and click. And now we have our selection. That's the freehand selection tool. Okay, the next tool I want to show you is the fill tool. Just over there, shortcut is G on the keyboard. Basically, it allows you to fill in shape areas with solid gradient, hatch, or bitmap fills. So I'm going to go ahead and select it. And you can see I have this new icon next to my cursor. And you'd think that you would just click and drag and do something like this. But as you can see, our image is completely gone. If we look in the layers panel, it's been completely replaced by this gradient. So this is not what you want to do. So press Command Z to go back a step. What you want to do is go to your layers. Just underneath there, you can see pixel layer. Go ahead and click on that. Now you can see just above our image, we have an empty pixel layer. This is where we're going to apply this fill tool. So I'll go back to my photo and I'll just click and drag down like this. And you can see we have a gradient and on one side it's white and the other side black. We can select each of these little color nodes here and assign a color to them. So if I head over here to the studio and select color, I can assign a color here. So I'll choose a purple here for the top and I'll go down to the bottom color node there, click on that. And this one I will choose some kind of orange color like that. So in the layers panel, we have our pixel layer with our gradient and underneath we have our background. We can't see it right now. So what you can do is you see where opacity is, you can click on this and you can just drag it down. And there we go. It's revealing behind the image. So you can drag this up and down. Maybe if you just want to figure out where your gradient is going to be, but I'll just drag it all the way up to 100% before I show you the next thing, okay? So in the context toolbar, you have a few options. We're using the fill right now, and right now it says linear, because that's going straight down like this, right? It's a linear gradient. You can choose a whole host of different options, so you can have just one solid color or an elliptical color like this. You see where it's kind of like a circle. You can have conical, radiant, mesh, and there's lots of different options, but we'll just stick to the linear one for now. You see down here is bitmap, hatch, and so on. So we'll just stick to linear for now. And there's an option to click on pigment blend as well, just to help that gradient a little bit more. And there's a few other options here. Basically, you can rotate where the gradient is. You can switch the sides, like reverse it, just with this button here. And you have maintain aspect ratio. It's on already, so I'm just going to leave it like that. So here's what I would do in this scenario. Go back to layers, and you see here, these are your blend modes where it says normal. And I will click on that and cycle through the different options. And you can see how it's affecting the layer underneath or how it's reacting with it. And that's what blend modes are. They basically decide how the selected layer will react with the one underneath using these different blend modes. So I'll just go ahead and leave it on soft light because that looks quite good. I'll click on that and I can go ahead and change anything I want. There's this little option in the middle here, so I can just drag that up. Maybe if I want a little bit more orange at the bottom, or drag it down for more purple at the top. And the creativity doesn't stop there. I can actually continue adding more and more colors here. So I can click on this line and you see I have another color node. Now I can go up and assign a different one to that. Maybe I'll choose this kind of blue color here, bluey green. And it obviously looks a bit ridiculous, but you can do that. If you no longer want it, just select it and press delete on the middle. So I'm back to my two nodes again. And of course, I can just delete the pixel layer here, just press delete, and we're back to our original image. The next tool I want to show you is the Flood Fill tool. And the shortcut for this one is G. And this one lets you fill in areas of your page, selection, or object with a single click or tap. So I was just showing you selections. You could go ahead and make a selection on this image, and then you could use this tool on that. So let's go ahead and select this tool. And you see we now have a paint bucket. So the way I would use this, so I can easily undo any mistakes I've made, is to go over to our layers and add a pixel layer here. I'll click on that, and now we have an empty pixel layer, and I can go up to the context toolbar here, and source, it says layers underneath. So when I start tapping on this image, it will work out its selection based on this background image underneath here in the layers panel. So I've got my pixel layer selected, and right up here, just take note, it says 18% tolerance. So I'm going to go down to this little section here, this piece of wall, and I'll just click once. And you can see it's filled just this portion of wall. It kind of knew where the wall was ending, and it's just chosen the correct position. And that's because of the tolerance being at 18. So I'll just press Command Z for a second and go back one step. I can actually choose a color for this paint. So if I go up to color and I grab this little color picker tool here and I just click it and drag it over, and I'll just choose some color here. I'll just let go. And you see up here, right next to the color picker tool, this is the color it's chosen. And this is now ready for us to use. So if I go back and I just tap once, you see it's filled it in with a color that's more fitting for this scene. You wouldn't really know from looking from far away, but it's a nice, clean, solid color there. And of course, once you've done that, you can go over to your blend modes and choose a kind of blend mode that you want. So I'll press Command Z again. A couple of times, there we go, we're back to normal. And if I go up to tolerance and just whack it up a little bit, let's see what happens when we click now. So I've just tapped it and you see it's included other portions of the image that weren't before. And the more you up that tolerance, the more it will select. Okay, so I'll press Command Z again, click once more. And there we go, it's included a lot of the image because I whacked that tolerance up. So I created that extra pixel layer there so I could easily get rid of it if I made a mistake. So I'll just press delete on it and we're back to our original image. Okay, let's move on. The next tool I'm going to cover is the paintbrush tool, and it's over there on the left hand side. The shortcut is B. So I'm going to go ahead and select it. And with this brush, basically you are painting raster strokes. And what I mean by that is you're painting in pixels. This is not a vector brush. So you can use this to create your digital art, or you can paint over any images that you have. So I've selected it, and the first thing you might want to do is change the brush size. So up there, this is your brush width. You can click on that and just drag it up or down wherever you want, and now the brush is slightly smaller. Another shortcut to do that is to use the left and right bracket keys on the keyboard. So if I select the right bracket key on the keyboard, you see it gets bigger, and the left bracket key, it gets smaller. And to choose the color of your brush, you can go over to color on the color tab over here. I've just chosen a pink color so it shows up in this tutorial. So you can choose any color you want there. And to choose the kind of brush you want to use, you can go down to the brushes tab on the studio. And right now it's on basic. You can scroll down to whichever one you want and choose it. And then you can scroll through the different kinds of brushes. I'll just keep it on this round soft brush for now. So I'm just going to go ahead and paint. Watch in the layers panel, I just have my image there called background. I'm just going to click and drag around like this. So if you notice, I just painted a brush stroke and I still only have one layer in the layers panel. And the only way for me to delete this line here without affecting the image behind is to press Command Z. Okay, so a better way is to go down and add a pixel layer. So there's the pixel layer. I've clicked it once, and now I have a pixel layer that I can start painting on. So I can click and drag, and I can let go, and that is above my actual image of the bread there. So if I just select V on the keyboard, my move tool, I can actually move that brush stroke around, and I can resize it if I want, and I can just delete it also, just by pressing delete. Okay, I'll just switch back to the paintbrush tool using the shortcut B on the keyboard. Let's have a look at some of the other options in the context toolbar. And one of them is the hardness here. And right now it's on 100%, so I'll just click and drag to paint out a line. You can see it has very sharp edges. If I go ahead and click and drag that down to 26% and I click and drag again, you can see it's a lot softer there. Okay, I'll just whack that back up to 100% and I'll press Command Z to delete those two. The other option over here is your opacity. And right now, if I just click and drag over this piece of bread here, you can see it's not transparent at all and I cannot see through the paint stroke. If I go ahead and drag this down to, let's say 26% or 25% again, you can already see as I hover over, you can see there is some transparency there. So if I click and drag, you can still see the bread in the background and I can just keep painting like this and it remains at 25%. If I let go and then I start painting again, so I'll click and start painting now, you can see I can gradually build up. I've let go and I'm clicking down again, let go and painting again. You can see I can kind of build up that because the opacity was at 25%. Okay, I'll whack that back up to 100% again and press Command Z to go back a few steps. And the next one is flow here. Right now it's on 100%. So again, I will just click and drag like this and let go. So that's what it does at 100%. Let's whack it down to, let's say, I don't know, really low, 4%. There we go. This basically controls how much paint flows out of the brush. So again, I'll just click once and drag. And you see it's kind of transparent, but as I keep painting over like this, I'm not letting go of the brush. You see it's kind of building up the amount of paint in there. And I haven't let go at all yet, and it's just building up and making it so I cannot see the bread behind it. Whereas on the transparency, when I was painting, I could paint once and it would not build up. I'd have to let go and start painting again. So that's your flow. And I'll press Command Z to get rid of those again. Okay, now I will show you the stabilizer. So I'll just make the brush a little bit smaller just by pressing the left bracket key. And before I click on the stabilizer, I just want to show you I'll click and draw some kind of wavy line like this. And I'm doing this on the trackpad, by the way, nothing special. Just like that, and it's not very wavy, it's not very smooth, is it? So if I press Command Z and we activate the stabilizer, I'll click on it. There are two modes in here. One of them is rope mode and the other one is window mode. So when I click it on rope mode, and maybe I set this one quite high, basically I'll click and you see there's a rope there. And if I up the value of the 70.8% over there, if I upped it even more, that rope would be even longer. So it allows me to get these nice smooth lines that follow me along. And when I go back on myself, it kind of gives you some slack. So I can go the other way and maybe create a little bit of a sharp corner there. So that's your rope mode. I'll press Command Z and we'll try this window mode here. This is more like a rubber band than a solid kind of rope. So I'll click on that and I'll just whack this up a little bit more as well. And I'll click and drag. And you see right now it's kind of a small, short rope. And if I just drag really fast, you see it's kind of like a rubber band and it kind of catches up with me. This could be very good for smooth, curved edges there. And this is basically your stabilizer. I'll press Command Z to get rid of that and uncheck stabilizer. And of course we have our blend modes here. Right now it's on normal, so I'll just quickly paint over that bread there, painting directly onto the image. And I'll just switch it to color burn. In fact, I'll increase the brush size so you can see it a little bit better. See, as I hover over, you've got that color burn there. You can switch through them to see which one you'd prefer the most. Maybe I'll go on screen. So I'll just quickly paint that there, and then I'll switch to a different one, color burn. And there we go. So you can use the different blend modes with the paintbrush as well. I'll press Command Z to go back. And we also have the option to have wet edges on our paintbrush. So if I go ahead and select that, and I just drag down the hardness a little bit, like that, I'll make it quite soft. And I'll just paint in this area here. In fact, I'll change it to blue, and we'll try again. You can see I have this kind of darker blue edges, and that's like if it was a little bit wet and the inside is kind of dried out. And if I uncheck that and start painting, you see we don't have the wet edges. Now, the reason I switched it to a slightly softer brush is because it doesn't really show up when it's very hard. So I'll go ahead and start painting, and I'll click on it and draw again. It's less evident that you have a wet edge, but it is a little bit more transparent. Also in the context toolbar, we have Protect Alpha. What does that do? Well, before I go ahead and do anything, I'm going to switch to the Move tool, and I'm just going to drag this image across a little bit so it shows our transparent background. And I'll switch back to the Paintbrush tool, and I won't select it yet. I'll just paint over the image and onto the transparent background. Now, if I go ahead and click on Protect Alpha, and I will draw again, or paint again, click and drag, you see it does not go over into the transparent zone. So it protects the alpha area. So no matter how hard I try, it will not go over into that transparent area. So that's what that's for. And it would be more useful to you if you had, let's say, a circle, like an apple or an orange, and you had a transparent background and you were doing some shading on it. It would not go over into the transparent area. And the next option is Reset. Basically, if you click that, it will reset all the settings in your context toolbar. So I'm not going to select that. And the next one is Symmetry Settings. And when I go ahead and click that, we get this little box popping up. If we toggle on Symmetry, it gives us a line. And you see, as I hover over, I can kind of paint like this, and it kind of duplicates like that. So if I go back up to it and I change that to 2, it's added another line going vertically. So now I can go ahead and do this. So this might be useful when painting a mandala or something that has to kind of be equal all sides. So you can play around with that as much as you want. You can also have mirror. Let me just press Command Z a few times, and I'll just chuck that back on 1. And click mirror. Now it's just a mirror image of your painting. So that's a fun option to get creative. And you also have this option here called Force Pressure. So when I paint now, it's just all the same thickness, isn't it? So I can click on Force Pressure, and I'm just using a trackpad on my Mac at the moment, but this can be more useful when you have a graphics tablet and more control. But if I just click and drag, and I drag lightly, let me try that again. It's pretty hard on the trackpad, so I'll just click lightly, and as I'm dragging, you see I'm very light, and if I click in on the trackpad, it adds more pressure and makes it thicker. So yeah, that's what that does. I'll press Command Z a couple of times and uncheck that. There is this button here called More, and when you click on that, it basically opens up your brush settings. So the brush I chose earlier, if I go over to my Brushes tab, the one I chose earlier, which was just a soft brush, I think it was 64, I can play around with that, with the size and the accumulation. We're getting a little bit advanced here, but basically you can change how your brush performs. So right now, if I click on spacing, I can drag this up, and you see the spacing is, they're like little blobs here. These pixel-based paintbrushes, like the ones we're using, are basically stamps. They are like a PNG image that's just repeating along a line. And if I drag down the spacing, you can see it actually looks like a proper paintbrush. So you can go ahead and play around with all of these settings when you get used to using Affinity. I'll just close that, and I'll show you some other brushes that are a lot better than these basic ones. So I'll just go ahead and go on inks, and I'll just choose maybe this one, Ink on Glass, and I'll paint. See, that looks a lot better than that basic one, and I'll just cycle through a few of the other options as well. We've got markers too, and this one looks kind of cool, shading marker. I'll change the color and increase the brush size. All right, let's choose one more, maybe like oils. And I'll go up to this one that's got a little bit of texture, Fine Fibers Oil. So I'll click and drag that around. Lovely, isn't it? And these are pixel brushes or raster brushes, because look, when you zoom in, you can start seeing all of these little squares. These are all pixels. Okay, moving on. The next tool I'm going to cover is the Paint Mixer brush, and this one basically simulates the mixing of wet paint by color blended painting. So I'm going to go ahead and select it, and you can see here I've brushed out a couple of brush strokes, and we're going to use this tool on here. Look in the context toolbar, we have a 23% strength, okay? And I'll just click and drag out. And you can see it's kind of pushing the paint outwards, but then it fades off. That's the strength, okay? 23. If I up the strength here, and we'll do it on this one, you can see the tail is a lot longer. So if I go down here and I just click and drag, you can see I am blending those together. I'm mixing the paint. So that's the basics of it. Let me just go over here, and you can notice actually that now that I've used that, I have some color left over. So if I click and drag, This is the color left over from me mixing those paints. So actually, if I want to clean my brush now, I can go up to the context toolbar and select clean brush. So if I select that, now you can see I have a completely clean brush, and when I'm clicking and dragging around, there's no more paint on that brush. Okay, let's use it again, but this time I will drag it down to 19%, and I'll just click on the blue and drag. You can see the tail is quite short, and it is for this one over here. So I'll just up the strength maybe to something like 74, and I'll click and drag. You can see it's kind of trying to almost get to that other paint stroke there. And if I just go ahead and just press and swirl this paintbrush around, I am eventually mixing them all together. And if I let go, you see I still have some remaining paint on there. And there we go. So I'm going to clean this brush now. So I'll go up and clean the brush. There's also an option to load your brush. So if I click on that, now you can see it's blue. Why is that? Well, over in the color tab, you can see I have a blue color already selected. So I can click and drag like that. I'll go ahead and clean it again. And before I load up my brush, I'll just change this color to pink. And I'll go over to load brush, click on that, and now I've loaded it with this pink. And also right next to it, there is two options, auto load brush and auto clean brush, to make it slightly easier for you. And here we have just a few different color options, RGB, CMYK, I've just left it on RYB. And again, you have reset to reset all these options. And of course, there's the symmetry settings just like before. So that is the paint mixer brush. Okay, this next tool is called the color replacement brush tool. Basically, you'd use it to replace an image's pixel colors with the current foreground color. So I'm going to go ahead and select it. And what it means by foreground color is what you have up there in your color tab. So this blue one here is selected right now. You can choose any color you want. And what we're going to do is just zoom in a little bit to this breadboard and look up in the context toolbar. You can see this one here, tolerance. Right now it's on 9%. And also see that sample continuously is off. Okay, so we're just going to test it out as it is. Look, as I hover around, you can see it's just selecting the breadboard here. I haven't pressed down or anything like that, but if I do go ahead and paint, you'll see what happens. So I'm starting to paint, and there we go. So that is at tolerance at 9%, okay? So I'll just press Command Z to go back a step, and I'll up the tolerance slightly more. It's basically replacing the color of the breadboard, because when we click down, it kind of takes a sample. So look, as I go across, you see it's not really going into the bread too much, although they are kind of similar colors. And you can see I'm getting a lot more of it in there, but that little brown bit is not being considered, okay? So you can play around with the tolerance as much as you want. I'm just going to press Command Z to go back, and we're going to click on Sample Continuously. So when I click on that, I'll leave it at 25%. I'll click down, and as I'm dragging around, it's continuously kind of sampling which areas should be included. And you see I'm making a few mistakes there, but it's kind of doing well. And this might be one of the use cases where you would use this tool just to replace a color in your image or painting or whatever. Of course, at the top, we have other options like contiguous, which I explained earlier on in the tutorial. And you've got wet edges and reset. Okay, that's pretty much the basics of the color replacement brush tool. The next tool I'm going to cover is the pixel tool. Shortcut for this one is Y on the keyboard. And it says here, paint pixel aligned hard edged lines. So when I go ahead and select it, I'll just click and drag to paint out my line. And you can see it's really skinny, isn't it? And if I just zoom in, you can see the pixel grid appears. And as I hover around with my pixel paintbrush, it only kind of sticks to within the boxes of this pixel grid. So I'll just click and drag like this. So using a tool like this would probably be better to have a smaller canvas. Maybe you'd create something like retro game art or like that pixelated look that old 16-bit games used to have. So let's just go ahead and create a new smaller document. So I'll click on the Affinity logo and I'll go to the plus and I'll just go down here to page width, page height. I've already done it. You see, I've made it 16 pixels across the whole document. So I'll press on create document and now you can see the pixel grid is there because it's such a small document, and I'll just switch over to that tool again, the pixel tool, and I'll just start painting. In fact, I'll choose a color first. I'll go for a red color and I'll just start painting out. Maybe I'll create a mushroom There we go. I'll leave a few little white bits in there. That's a really bad one, apologies. And I'll make the base. So I'll just choose a different color for that one as well. And here we go. Got my base. That's kind of like a mushroom. I could go and select white and just fill it in with a bit more white in a few places. That is a really bad mushroom, apologies, but it's a tutorial and I can't spend too long on it. So there we go, pixel art for the Pixel tool. Moving on. The next tool I'm going to cover is the Erase Brush tool, and the shortcut for this one is E. We have a few more options underneath here, also erase brushes, but do different things. Let's just start off with the Erase Brush tool. It's your classic eraser. So I've selected it and I'm ready to start erasing. So I'll just click and start dragging around, and you can see those transparent pixels in the background. I only have one image in my layers, so that's just a transparent background behind there. In the context toolbar, you also have another option here called accumulation. So if I just drag that down, it was at 100%, I'll just drag it to 50, and I'll try it over here. You can see it partially erases a portion of the image. So I'm just going to click and drag, and my finger hasn't left the trackpad yet, and it's not erasing anymore. So I have to let go and then click once again, and it will start erasing it further. And I can just keep doing that to completely erase it. Okay, let me just reset that. The next tool I'll cover is the Background Erase Brush. And it says erase pixels of similar color to remove background. So I'll go ahead and select it. And there's one thing I want you to see up here is the tolerance. Just like I showed you previously on another tool, tolerance is currently at 10%, okay? And sample continuously is off. So let's see how it works. So I'm going to click once and I'm just going to drag it around. And the cool thing with this is it knows where the background is. So I'm going to keep doing this, and it's not perfect. You see around here, I'm just trying to erase that corner, but it's not working, okay? It's not sampling continuously. So I have to lift my finger off the trackpad and then tap again, and then erase a little bit more. It's not perfect, as you can see, but this is how it works with those settings that we have on. So I'll just press Command Z to go back a step, and I'll go up to sample continuously. I'll select that, and we'll just try and get this area again. Okay, it didn't do a great job there. I'll press Command Z and go in. And you see, as I go over this area, it's sampling continuously, so it probably doesn't realize that the lightest part of that is not part of the background. So change the settings up here to suit your needs. But for the rest of the image, it kind of, yeah, this is not what I would use. I wouldn't use sample continuously here, but you can see what those options do. So if I drag the tolerance up a little bit more, and I'll take off sample continuously, now I can paint, and you can see it's not doing as good a job. It's kind of erasing quite a lot of that background, actually. So I would keep it at a lower tolerance level, like 10% for this image at least. The next tool I'm going to cover is the Flood Erase tool. Same shortcut as before, which is E. It says erase pixels of a similar color with a single click tap. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And look, we have our bucket again. And this is very similar to the Flood Fill tool, but this time we're just erasing the background. So the only thing we have in the context toolbar is the tolerance level. Right now it's on 8, so I'll just tap here. And you see it's erased a portion of it. I can just tap once again up here, and I can keep tapping until it erases that background. I'll do the same over here. And it's pretty much all gone here, just a little bit more. Oh, look, it's completely messed up. So I'll press Command Z now. And remember, when using these tools here, these erase tools, they are destructive edits. You see, I only have one layer there. There's no mask. I can't go back if I've made a mistake other than pressing Command Z. So be careful when using these destructive tools. Oh, look, it hasn't got that section there. I'll click once more. There we go. So I'll just press Command Z and I'll just change the tolerance. You should know what that does by now because I've used it quite a lot now, but I'll just up the tolerance quite a lot and just click once. Yep, complete annihilation. Okay, I'll press Command Z and move on to the next tool. The next tool I want to show you is the Adjustment Brush tool. Basically, this one applies a self-masking adjustment just by painting. So I'm going to go ahead and select it. Before I do anything, do you remember the adjustments down there right at the beginning of the tutorial? I clicked on it and I had all these options here. Well, basically, this is the same kind of way, but I just paint it directly onto the image. So up in the context toolbar, you'll see those same options up here in the drop-down menu, and I will just choose HSL here, okay? From this point, I can go ahead and click Add Adjustment and then start painting, or I can just start painting now. So I'm just going to click and drag around, and you won't know what I've done yet because we haven't made any adjustments yet, but up pops the HSL box, and I want to change these red lips into kind of pinky purple ones. So up here in the colors, obviously the lips are red, so I'm going to choose the red one, and I will just drag this hue slider up until I find the kind of color I want, maybe something like that. And from this point, I could just continue painting. So I'll just click and drag around. Remember, you can change the size of the brush whenever you want by pressing the left bracket key, or just up there in the context toolbar, brush width, and just paint around the lips as best I can in a short amount of time with the trackpad, that is, as well. So there we go, almost done. And I'll make a little mistake over there on purpose. So basically this is a non-destructive edit, which means I can actually erase any mistakes I've made very easily anytime I want. So if we look in the layers panel, we have our HSL shift adjustment applied just because I was painting it. And if I want to concentrate on just the mask and not the whole image, I can just hold down Option or Alt on the keyboard and click on this mask layer here. And now we'll see what I've actually painted or what I've left out. So I'll just fill in those little areas there. And then I can go back over to it, hold Option or Alt, and click once, and we're back. Another way to do that is just to right click and click on Edit Adjustment, by the way. So in fact, I will just go back to that, Option, Alt, click. And you see right here, I can paint. I can continue painting wherever I want. But if you hold down the Option or Alt button, it switches to erase. So I can just go ahead and erase any mistakes I've made, maybe erase a little bit of that. And in fact, I'll switch back over to the photo. So Option or Alt and click, and I'll hold down Option or Alt, and then I'll just erase a little bit like that. So obviously this requires a little bit of skill, and you don't actually have to do it this way. Maybe a slightly easier way would be to use the selection brush. So in fact, I will delete that layer just so I can show you maybe a quicker way of doing it. Go up to our selection brush tool, click on that, and I'll just click and select. There we go, the lips are already selected. And now I can go back down to adjustment brush tool, and I'll make the brush bigger, and I'll just start painting in, and again that pops up. I'll just whack it over to the color I wanted. There we go, and I'll continue painting, and I don't have to be so precise this time. And I'll just close that down and press Command D to deselect that, and it's done a pretty good job. Now of course I can erase portions where it's gone slightly over, but I'll just leave it like that. And just for fun, we'll use another adjustment. So I'll go over here and let's choose something else, split toning. So I'll choose that one there, and I'll add the adjustment this time. I'll just click on that, and it's added it to my layers panel, and I'll make the brush bigger, and I'll just start painting. So when I let go, this will appear, and I can choose what I want my highlights to be and what I want my shadows to be just by dragging these around just like this. So it's a really handy tool, very quick to use. I'll just delete that. I don't want that. The next tool I'll cover is the Burn Brush tool, and it says burning darkens areas of an image under a brush stroke. So I'm going to go ahead and select it. Basically, this one darkens areas of your image. So if we look in the context toolbar, you have much the same options as we've had with the paintbrush tool, etc. And you've also got this extra option here. It says you can concentrate on shadows, midtones, or highlights. And you've also got this option you can toggle on, protect hue, color, basically. So what I'm going to do is just zoom into the eye. I'm going to make my paintbrush a lot smaller. And I'm just going to try and burn around the rim of the iris just to darken it slightly. So I'm just going to click and drag. Maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger. Click and drag around. And I'll leave it at that. You can't really tell too much because it's kind of faint, but if I press Command Z to go back, you can see there is a difference. I'll hold Shift, Command, and Z to go forward a step, so just a little bit. Okay, let's move over to the other eye, and I'll try it on here. Remember, this edit here is a destructive edit, so it's not creating a mask or anything. If I mess up here, the only way to go back on myself is to press Command Z. So be careful with using this tool. And just so you know, the layer mask there in the layers is actually the lips below, okay? Not the burn brush tool. The next tool we'll use is the dodge brush tool, and dodging lightens areas of an image under a brush stroke. So basically it kind of does the opposite of the burn brush tool. So I'm gonna go ahead and select it, and you can see we have the same options above. So this time, because I wanna lighten an area, I'll just lighten up the area next to the pupil here. And I'll just drag around maybe a couple of times. And I'll do the same with this eye as well. click and drag. You can see it brightening slowly. There we go. I think that's all that's needed. It's pretty powerful stuff there. Okay, so that is the Dodge Brush tool. The next tool I'll cover is the Sponge Brush tool, and this one selectively saturates or desaturates areas within an image. Again, this is a destructive tool, and I don't generally use these destructive tools. I usually create masks and so on and so forth, but I'll show you how this works. So I'm just going to select it and look up in the context toolbar. This time you have a few more options over here. One of them is saturate, one of them is desaturate, one of them is vibrance, and the other one is HSL saturation. So we'll keep it as it is as default with just saturate on. And what I'll do is just saturate these eyes a little bit. So I'll just make my brush bigger with the right bracket key. And it's a really soft brush right now here. I don't want any hardness as I'm painting these eyes. So I'm just going to click and drag. You can see the colors coming out slowly there. There we go. That's a little bit more saturated. And I'll go in and do the same here. Okay, the eyes have been sponged, and that is the Sponge Brush tool. The next tool we're going to cover is the Filter Brush tool, and this is very much like the Adjustment Brush tool, but this time it applies a self-masking live filter by painting. So I'm going to go ahead and select that one, and up in the context toolbar you can see Gaussian blur is on. So if I just kind of hover my brush around, you can see it's kind of giving it a little bit of a blurry eyebrow there. I haven't painted anything yet, so I'm going to go and choose one to sharpen everything. So multi-band sharpen. I'll select that one, and now it will hover over. You can see the difference it's going to make, okay? That looks a little bit too full on for me. And before I paint anything, I'm just going to select my background, not the lips adjustment I did earlier, just the background, which is the image. And I can start painting. So I'll just click and drag. That looks like a little bit too much. So I'm going to go over to the image, and where it's applied the multi-band sharpen, I'm just going to click on it once, and I can see this pop-up box here, and you can see the base radius is at 2 pixels. So I'm just going to drag that down to like 0.1 pixels. I think that's a little bit better. And now I'll continue to paint the eyebrows. So I'll make the brush slightly smaller, and I'll just paint over ever so slightly just to sharpen the eyebrows, the eyelashes, maybe a little bit around the eyes as well. That's probably a bit too sharp there, but hey ho. I'll just do the rest for the eyelashes and eyebrows here. Just paint it a little bit, and there we go. That's a lot better, isn't it? And just zooming out, looking at those lips, they look a little bit too full on, don't they? So because it was a non-destructive edit from earlier, I'll just tap on those lips there, the HSL shift adjustment, and I'll go to the blend mode, and I'll just go down to like average here, and I'll select that, and it looks a little bit more realistic, doesn't it? Okay, I'll select the image again, and in fact, let's choose another filter brush. Okay, just to show you there are some cool other options up here. So I'm going to go to glitch. I'll click on that, and I'll make the brush bigger. And you can see as I hover around, look at that, that's pretty crazy. With this glitch, you have loads of different options. So ripple is one, and waves is another. And I'll just choose scramble because it's pretty full on, this one. And there we go. You can just paint over whatever you want. I'll press Command Z on that. So you can get creative with this, but I'm just going to delete that for now, and we can continue. I completely forgot to tell you that if you go ahead and paint using that glitch, you don't have to accept that it's just like that and you can't change anything. You can go over to the layers panel and just tap once on that glitch layer, and you get this box here, and you can just choose the glitch amount anytime you want. And you can even just delete it. Okay, now let's move on. The next tool we're going to use is pretty self-explanatory. It's the Blur Brush tool, and it basically blurs hard edges within an image. So I've selected it, and I can just go in and go to a pretty sharp area, these few bits of branches and trees, and just drag it around, and there we go, I've blurred them. But this is a destructive edit, so the only way you can go back from it is to press Command Z. And again, you can control how this performs by changing the settings in the context toolbar. Okay, in this section, we're going to use the Sharpen Brush tool, and this one basically sharpens images by increasing the contrast of neighboring pixels. So I've selected it up there in the context toolbar. You can see we have 3 options in the drop-down menu: clarity, unsharp, mask, and harsh. We'll just use clarity. And if I zoom in, you can see this little bit's a little bit blurry. Now, just so you know, This is just a JPEG, it's not a high-end RAW image, so this will probably work a little bit better if I had a few more pixels to work with. But I'm just going to paint in this area here. I'm going to lift my finger off the trackpad and try again. And the more I do that, you see the more it becomes clear. But you can also tell that actually the pixels are showing now. So yeah, not great. Let me just try the harsh option and I'll just click and drag. You see that? It's really bringing out how low end this image is. And I'll just press Command Z on that. I don't tend to use these. I would probably use one of the live filters down here, or I would use the filter brush tool, as that isn't destructive. But anyway, that is the sharpen brush tool. Okay, the next tool is the median brush tool, and it says it selectively reduces noise by blending pixels under the stroke. So it's pretty fitting to use on this image because it's pretty low quality, this one. If I go ahead and zoom in, you'll see it has some noise there, not the best quality. And I'm just going to go ahead and use it. I'm not going to change any of the settings in the context toolbar. So here we go. I'm just going to start painting. And you can see it removing a bit of that noise there. I'll just paint a portion of it and zoom out so we can see from a distance. You can't really tell anyway with this, but it just seemed to blend those pixels together. And also it kind of gets rid of a little bit of detail as well. But this may be useful for you in some circumstances. But remember, this is a destructive tool. And again, the only way you can go back is to press Command Z. Okay, in this section, we're going to be covering the smudge brush tool. And it says here, drag color around an image similar to dragging a brush through wet paint. So I've selected it. There's not many options in the context toolbar, but you can choose the strength and the flow. I'll just keep it as it is, and I'll just zoom in and start using it. You can see it's just kind of smudging everything around. I'll increase the brush size so we can see what it looks like on a bigger scale. There we go. It's performing exactly as you'd expect. It's smudging things around. Okay, moving on. In this section, I want to cover the clone brush tool. Shortcut for this one is S on the keyboard. It says brushes one part of an image onto another using sampling. So I've selected the tool, and what I want to do is just clone this clock over here and place it over here. So first of all, I need to get a sample. So how we do that is, first of all, decide the size of your brush. You can press the left bracket key or right bracket key, or up in the context toolbar. And I think I'll have it around about this big. And I'll press Option or Alt on the keyboard, and you see the crosshair. We're ready to take our sample. So we just click on the trackpad or left button, click on a mouse. And now we've taken our sample. So if I head on over here, you can see I have my sample, and I could just place it anywhere I want and just tap once and it will apply it. But before I do that, I just want to show you a few options in the context toolbar above. So you can take a sample from the current layer and below, or current layer or layers beneath. Right now, I only have one layer in the layers panel, just one image, so I'll just leave it on that one. Also over here, you can rotate this duplicate here, this clone, and you can increase the size. So you can do it all from there, or slightly easier, you can just use the arrow keys on your keyboard. So if you use the left arrow key, it rotates left, right arrow key, it rotates right. Let me just make it go back to vertical where it was. If you use the up arrow key, it zooms in, and down arrow key, it zooms out. So I think it was around about there, and I'll just click once. You see, now I have cloned it, and if you look, there's a little crosshair just underneath the original clock. See, it's moving as I move this brush around. So it's still taking samples. So I can just click and drag from wherever I want. But actually that looks terrible. So I'm just going to press Command Z. Okay, let's try it again with this little guy here. So I'm going to take another sample, and I'll just hold down Option and click on him or her. I don't know what it is. And I'll just place it over here. I'll try and make a duplicate. So it looks a little bit too big and the background is slightly different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it smaller by just holding down the down arrow key like that. And also I don't want the brush to be so big, so I can press on the left bracket key to make it a lot smaller. And I'll just place him around about here and just brush up and leave it at that. So now you can see I have two squirrels. One of them is Minnie, and that's how you use the clone brush tool. Okay, so the next tool I'll show you is the Undo Brush tool, and it says selectively undo modifications to individual pixels to a previous history state. So we've just cloned that clock and also the squirrel down there. So I've got this selected, and basically you can just hover over anything that you did earlier and just erase it. And I can go up to this clock as well, and I can also erase that. So pretty easy, isn't it? Okay, now I'm going to cover the In-Painting Brush tool. Shortcut for this one is J on the keyboard, and with this one you can remove unwanted subject matter from your image. So let's say you have a clock on a wall that you no longer need. You can just erase it using this. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it, and I'm just going to paint around there and let go. And you see it's working out how to get rid of it, and look at that. Very good job that is. No one would ever know. No one's going to know. Okay, and the next one, I'll just make the brush slightly smaller, is the squirrel. It doesn't always work, but let's try it on this little squirrel here. There we go, and I'll let go. Yeah, it's done a pretty good job there. You can see it's made some kind of weird thing here with the hair, so I'll just kind of brush around that, see if we can get rid of it. And from a distance, you'd never know that that squirrel was there, would you? So that's the In-Painting Brush tool. Okay, the next tool I want to show you is the Healing Brush tool. Shortcut for this one is J on the keyboard, and you can repair and retouch unsightly areas of an image. And it performs pretty much like that Clone Brush tool, but slightly cooler. So I'm going to show you how it works. So I've selected the tool. Now I'm going to go in and just zoom in onto something. So of course we have to take a sample. So you see this little thing here, I want to get rid of that. So I'm going to take a sample from here, and I'm going to go over, and I'm just going to brush that away. And that worked really well, didn't it? So let me show you what I mean by it kind of adapts to the color. So up here, I'll just click and take a sample from here using that Option or Alt button. And you see it's all blue right now, but as I hover over the brown, you see it kind of changes to a brown color. So I could just place it here and start painting there. So it seems to kind of match the color of wherever you're going to paint it. So that might not be a great example here, but it's just to show you that it does try to match the color. So if we switch over to our portrait here, you have this girl who's got a couple of spots. So we're going to use the same tool again, and I'm going to take a sample of some skin area where it's actually clear. There's the spot there. So I'll take a skin sample from here, or maybe over here, and I'll just click once to remove it. You see that? That worked really well. And I'll take another sample from here, and I'll just click and drag over there. And it seems to be doing a really good job there. I'll just try it one more time over here. There we go. So good for photo retouching. Let's move on. The next tool I want to show you is the Patch tool. Shortcut for this one is J. It says repair extensive areas of an image by replacing with another target area. So I'm going to select it. I'm not going to worry about the context toolbar yet. I'll show you that in a second. I'll show you how it works. So we've got this area again, a little bit of a blemish there. And what you do is just click and drag and just kind of select the area you want to replace and let go. Once you let go, wherever you move your cursor is basically what the selection area will be filled with. So you want to choose something kind of similar. So I'll just click up here. Yeah, maybe there. So I'll just click once and again, and that's done its job there. So that's one way of doing it. I'm going to press Command Z to go back again. Okay, and this time I'm going to go up here and I'm going to choose texture only. So I'm going to select that, and now I'll make my selection again. And you see, as I move it, it's kind of a little bit transparent. I'm just replacing the texture. Maybe I want the texture from up here, maybe not. There's a few wrinkles there. Maybe I'll have it from just here. So that's another way you can use that tool. And we'll just try again. Instead of texture, we'll just use selection is source. So when I go over here and I'll just draw it out again, now that is the source. I can kind of stamp that somewhere else on the face. See, like just there. You can have lots of them. Okay, I'll press Command Z to go back. And the last one is transparent. So if I click on that, I'll make the same selection again. Again, it's kind of semi-transparent there. And you can kind of replace, there we go, that looks even worse. So have fun playing around with that. And of course, up here, you have the rotation and the scale, just like I showed you before, where you can use the arrow keys to increase the size or rotate left and right. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to use the blemish removal tool. Again, shortcut is J. It says it removes small imperfections from images. So I'm just going to select that, and here's a small imperfection over here. I'll adjust my brush size to suit, and I'll just click once, and it's gone. Let's see if we can find any more imperfections. There's one over there. I can click, and I can also drag. You see that? I can click and drag and let go, and I've sorted that out. And I'll just make the brush slightly smaller, so click, drag, and that's done. Click, drag. So that's how you use that tool. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to use the red eye removal tool. Shortcut is J. It says it fixes red eye effect in your photos and preserves the detail in the eye. So I've selected that tool, and in fact I had to create this image because I could not find any image that I have of this happening. This used to happen more in the 80s, so yep, I've created that effect. So let me go ahead and zoom into the eye, and this is how it works. You just click and drag out a kind of box and let go and it fixes it. It's that simple. Click, drag, fix. That's pretty much it. Moving on. The next tools I'm going to be concentrating on are the pen tool and the node tool. And these two tools work hand in hand. Basically, with the pen tool, you can draw shapes, lines, and basically with the node tool, you can manipulate those lines or shapes. So before I go ahead and show you how to use it, I'm just going to reveal a few of the layers that I've created earlier. And all of these layers, I have used the pen and node tool to help me create them. So for instance, I just drew out a simple shape here and I turned it into a picture frame. So it's kind of like a custom picture frame. And I added in an image that I had on my computer. Another one is this odd shape here. I turned this into a text frame and I added some text inside of it. Check that out. And also I drew another shape here and I played around with the blend modes over here so I could just cycle through and change the way it looks. And I did the same for this on the side, but I also added a gradient in there as well. And you can see I have a simple outline on the side as well where I just kind of use the pen tool to trace the outline of the tree. And finally, I use the pen tool to create a little seagull over here. And I can scale this up as much as I want because these are kind of vector tools. The pen and node tool are available in the Vector Studio, so I use those quite a lot. So let's get started and I'll show you how to use the pen tool. Okay, with the pen tool selected, I'm just going to zoom in over here and just show you how it's done. So I'm going to click once, that is a sharp node. I'm going to click once more and we have another sharp node and we've got this line in the center there. If you want to add thickness to that, we have to go up to the context toolbar right up here and click on this. Choose the width of the stroke. I'm going to click on that and just drag out a little bit, maybe to about that much. And if I wanted to change the color of that, instead of it being black, I could just go over here and select the stroke color. So you see I could choose any color I want there, but I'll just keep it black for now. And the box right next to that is called your fill. We'll get to that. If I just click once more over here, you can see I have a nice sharp corner there. And if I click and drag, you see now I have a smooth node and it has handles which I can manipulate like this. And if I just keep clicking and dragging, I get the smooth nodes. And if I just tap once, I get a sharp node and I can have those nice sharp corners. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And I'm going to go over to this mini course. So I'll just try and trace each one of these shapes and show you how I did it. So the first one is exactly what we've just done. So just click once there and click once there. And that's it. Excellent. If I wanted to continue drawing, watch what happens when I just tap again. You see, it continues the line. I don't want that. So I can press Command Z to go back a step. And now I can press Escape on the keyboard. And that allows me to draw a brand new stroke. So look in the layers panel, we have our line. That's the one we've just drawn out. In fact, I'll drag that on top. That pixel layer there is the little course I have in the background. So anyway, from here, I could just click once there, and so on. So these are all sharp nodes because they are all square. I'm going to go ahead and press Escape again because I'm going to create a new shape. So for this one, I'm going to tap once there. And over here, I will just tap and drag out, and you see there's my smooth node, and I will just tap and drag, and then I'll just tap once more there. So now I've got these smooth edges here. Moving on to the next one, I'll press Escape on the keyboard, and for this one we're kind of combining them. So I'm going to click once and tap once again, just a simple line, and from here I will just click and drag out like that. and I'll just tap once more. And you can see it's not perfect. That is where the node tool will come in handy. I'll show you that in a second. Let's move over to the next one. I'll press escape again because I'm going to draw a new shape. So from here, I'll just tap once there, and then from here, I'm going to click and drag out like that. And before I let go, my finger is still on the trackpad. I'm going to hold Option or Alt on the keyboard right now. And now I can drag that handle to a different area. And I'll let go. And now all I have to do is just tap once and it will follow that line of the handle. Again, it's not perfect. Okay, let's try out the node tool, but first I'm going to select V, which is the move tool, and I'm going to select the first line that I drew out, and I'll just zoom into it. So now I'll go ahead and select the node tool, which is A on the keyboard, and I'll show you what this can do. So with the node tool, I can click and drag on these nodes and move them around like that. I can also click and drag around the stroke in the middle there. And you see, as I've dragged it out, you can see there's these handles here, and we can also click and drag these handles around with the node tool. So you can further manipulate the shape however you wish. With the node tool, you can also add more nodes onto your stroke. So right here, I can click once, and you see now I have a new handle that I can also manipulate further. Okay, with the node tool, I'll just select my next shape. So another thing you can do, this is a sharp node here. I can convert this to a smooth node just by double tapping. So I'll double tap on the trackpad. It's a smooth node. I'll double tap again and it's a sharp node. And the option to do that is also in the context toolbar above. So with that node selected, I'll head up here and you see convert to smooth, convert to sharp, and then there's a convert to smart. I'll just click on convert to smooth. And you see, it's basically done the same thing. Also with the node tool, you don't have to just select one node. You can actually click and drag over multiple nodes and then drag them around like this. You can also draw to make your selection. So if you just hold down Option, click, you can start drawing like this. Maybe it's a little bit complex. You can draw around a few of them and go back to the start. And now all of those are selected and I can drag them around. So now I'll just select this individual node here. And I can hold down some shortcuts on the keyboard. So if I hover over this handle here and I hold down Option or Alt on the keyboard and click and drag, I can change the direction of the handle here. And if I go ahead and drag the bottom handle and I just do it slowly, you can see I can bring it back to normal. You see the smooth node is now activated again. So Option, click, drag, and I can just drag that back into place and it turns back into a smooth node. Okay, from this point, if you wanted to continue drawing along this line, you'd think that you'd switch to the pen tool, shortcut is P, and just click on one of these nodes and continue drawing. But in fact, this is wrong because if I switch back to the move tool, you can see it's completely different shape, completely different layer. So that's the wrong way to do it. I'll go ahead and delete that and show you the correct way. So we'll enter the pen tool again. And from this point, I'm just going to hold down Command on the keyboard. And watch what happens when I do that. You see, we have our node tool back. So you can actually toggle between the pen tool and the node tool just by holding down Command. And this comes in really useful if you want to make quick changes. So I'll hold down Command. Now I'm in the node tool. I can just click and drag. I can make any changes that I want. And just by letting go, I'm back in the pen tool. So I want to continue drawing this line. I'll hold down Command, select the node that I want to continue drawing from, let go, and now I can click and continue drawing. Nice and easy. Okay, let's use the pen tool to draw out a shape and actually complete a shape so it's not just an outline. So as I hover over the first node that I jotted down, you can see a little circle. That means we're going to complete our shape. So I'm going to go and click that. Inside is our fill area, and we haven't set anything for it yet. So if we go up to the top here, you see use fill. If I toggle that on, we now have a white fill, and you can change the fill color either over here in the color tab. You see this white is your fill, the black is your outline, your stroke. So from here I can choose a color. Let's make it maybe like pink, and you can also change the color right over here in the context toolbar. So I just click once and perhaps I'll choose that color there. So from this point, I can just toggle on or off my fill or stroke right up here. So there's the use line style. I can click on that and now I've gotten rid of it. Okay, I've got this simple curve here and now I want to show you the stroke settings. So up here in the context toolbar, Edit Stroke Settings. I'm going to click on that, and now I have this box here. Here I can change the width, of course, but I also have other options. You see here it says cap. Let me just bring this up so it's closer. Cap are the ends of your curves. Right now you can see it's round. I can switch over to butt cap and it's flat, and I can go to square cap and it's still flat, but it's just pushed it out further. I also have joins. Right now it's on miter join. That's why it's pointy in the edge there. I can switch over to round join and it rounds off the edges. And if I hit on bevel join, you can see it just lops off the side like that. So you've got many options here, and the align options won't work as it is right now. As you can see, nothing will really change. But when I go ahead and complete this shape, let me just complete the shape there, and I'll go back to the stroke settings. Now I can go on align, and I will click on align stroke to inside. So when I click on that, you see the stroke is now inside of that blue line. And if I select align stroke to outside, of course, it's outside. So much to play with here. So the order comes in handy when you have a fill. So let's just quickly add a fill to it. So I'll just add that same color again, and I'll go back to those settings. So right now it's on draw stroke in front of the fill. If I click on draw stroke behind, you can see half of the stroke is basically hidden because the fill is in front. Okay, start and end. This one works better if you have just a single line. So I'll go ahead and just draw out a single line like this, and I'll go up to the settings again, and I'll click on start, and I'll choose just a triangle. There we go, we have a triangle there. Let me go up. You can change the size of it like this, and you can also add something on the end. So maybe I'll add a circle. And then these options over here basically allow you to place your arrow within the line or at the end of the line. So look, that's the difference there. And you can also swap them around with this button, and you can just delete them so it goes back to your normal line. And then pressure under here, if I click on that, you can basically change the pressure profile of this line. So I can just click once here and just drag down, and maybe it's thick in the middle here. I can go ahead and delete that node, and maybe I just want to drag one down. If I just drag like this, the whole line goes. But if I hold down Option and click and drag, I can get one end to be thin and the other to be thick. And you can add lots of nodes here, however many you want, and fashion it as you wish. And I'll just press reset, but you can also save those profiles. I'll just reset it. So those are your stroke settings. There's also an option here to add a dashed line style. So they're basically just dashes, and you can change how it looks just down here by changing all of these values. And I'll just change it back to a solid line style. And also you can see right at the end there is the path brush. This is more for the Vector Studio, where you would choose a path brush instead of this solid line. So far in this section of the pen tool, we've been using this mode here, pen mode, but you might have also seen there's other options: smart mode, polygon mode, and line mode. So let me just click on smart mode to show you how it differs. So I'm just going to jot a point down there and jot a point here, and you see they look slightly different. There's a little red dot in the center there. And if I clicked over here, you see it automatically gives me this nice smooth curve here, and I can keep clicking around and it will automatically try and work out what I'm trying to do. I can also click and drag as well, like this. And I rarely use this mode, but it can come in handy sometimes. Let me just close that shape. That's a mess, isn't it? So that's the smart mode. I'll delete that. The next mode is polygon mode. And with this, basically, you can only draw straight lines. So I'll just click, click, click. And if I try and click and drag like we did before to get those handles, it doesn't let me. I can only draw in straight lines. Okay, let me delete that. The last one is line mode. And of course, you can only draw lines with this. So I'll just tap, tap, and I'll just tap again. And you see it doesn't continue. I tap again. So you can only draw straight lines. You can also create masks and selections using the pen tool. So let's quickly draw out some kind of shape for this tree here. And there we go. Up in the context toolbar, there it is. You can see mask. When I click on that, you see it's basically masked out everything apart from the tree. So if I click on V, the move tool, I can choose to move this mask anywhere I want, and I can also scale it up and down. Okay, I'll press Command Z to go back a few steps. And this time, using the pen tool, we'll go ahead and click on selection. So when I click on selection, you can see we have these marching ants just like I showed you earlier on in the tutorial. And from this point, you can go ahead and add an adjustment or a live filter, or you can click on the mask layer there, just like I showed you before. And to get rid of these marching ants, you just press Command D on the keyboard and that deselects it. So at the very start of this tutorial, I showed you a few examples of what you could do: picture frames, text frames. So now I'm going to go ahead and do all of that. So we'll start off with the tree, just like we did before. I'll just choose some kind of random shape here. And now that that's done, we can play around with blend modes. So I can go over to layer here, click on where it says normal, and I can cycle through one that I kind of like. I'll just leave it on soft light for now. And I can go back and change that at any point because it's a non-destructive edit. If I feel like I've made a mistake, like down here, maybe I can hold down the Command key, switch over to that node tool, or toggle over to that and make my adjustments. Okay, next up is the picture frame. So let's go ahead and create that. So I'll just click once here, there. There we go, that will do. So from here, I could just right click and I can go down to convert to picture frame. I've clicked on that, and from this point up in the context toolbar, you can see replace image. When I tap on that, it opens up my file system, and then I can go and find my portrait and click open, and there it is. And now I can just move it up or down to scale it into place, and this little slider down here. And that's the picture frame. I'll switch over to the pen tool again, and I will choose a different shape. I'll just draw it out like this. I'll try and make it similar to the one I showed you at the start. And there we go, I've completed the shape. Again, right click, go down, convert to text frame. I'll click on that. And now you can see I can start typing up there. So I can just type something, hello. Also, I can just right click and insert filler text so we can see what it will look like if it was all completely filled up. And I can hover over the bounding box here and I can change it and it adapts with the shape. So the text is completely adapting to it, which is pretty cool. Let's switch to the pen tool again. Now we can add an outline to the tree using the pen tool. So I can just click and drag, just like I showed you. Right now, only the fill is showing. So I can simply go up here, uncheck the fill, check the stroke, and it's black right now. I don't want that. I can head on over here and change the color to some kind of yellow color there. And from here, I could just click and drag using all the skills I showed you earlier on. Maybe I just tap once there to have a sharp node and just keep going all the way down. So yeah, you get it. So I'll press escape. And for the last one, I will head on up to the snapping tool up here. I'll just check it. And then I will just click once here and click once here, and I'll just tap on all the corners there. And I'll just switch over to the node tool just by holding Command, and I'll just drag this in so we've got a nice smooth edge there, and I'll give it a fill. So uncheck the stroke, check the fill, and instead of having a solid one, I can use the gradient tool. Remember that gradient tool from earlier? This one up here, or the fill tool I should call it. I can just click and drag like that, and I can change the color to just something so it's a little bit more evident I am making changes. And from here I can go to layers and choose a blend mode. Okay, let's move on to the next tools. The next tools I'm going to cover are the shapes, and there's lots of them. And at first glance they may seem pretty simple to you. There's just a circle there, there's a triangle and a square, but actually all of these shapes are kind of smart, and I'm going to show you why. So to begin with, I'll just choose the rectangle tool and I'll click and drag out. Now, if I want to keep it in proportions, I just hold down Shift on the keyboard, and if I hold down Command as well, I can scale from the center. Okay, so I'll drag out to around here. So if you look in the context toolbar, you have the usual options, your fill, your stroke thickness, but also you have this option here. This is called presets. So when I click on this, I can decide what kind of corners I want. I can have rounded by just clicking on it, and now they're rounded. And I can choose any of the other presets, but if you look, there is a little red dot there. And from here, we can click and drag and make it a circle. So that's quite cool. Okay, I'll make it back into a square again. And if we go over here, you can see it says corner. Right now it says rounded. So if I click here and I drag around, basically you can do the same thing, but just with this slider here. Right now, single radius has been checked. So if I uncheck it, now I have the option to change each individual corner. So TL means top left, TR top right, and so on and so forth. So if I just click and drag this slider, I can just change that top left corner. If I go to the top right, I can choose which one I want. Maybe I want a concave on this side, and I'll click and drag that up. And look, the little red nodes are still there, so I can do it directly on the shape if I want. So you can get nice and creative with that and maybe turn it into a text frame or a picture frame. I'll go ahead and check single radius again, and I will just delete that shape. Let's test one more of these shapes out. We'll choose the star tool. So I'll click and drag out again, and this time I have even more options because it's a completely different shape. So I'll just make all of my edits directly on the shape, just like this. And I can go up here and drag this down and make them a bit more rounded. And look, I'm creating a flower. How cool is this? So I'll delete that and we'll go ahead and make a picture frame. So maybe I want my picture frame to be around here. I'll just use the ellipse tool. I've dragged it out. And now I'll just right click, convert to picture frame. And now I'll go ahead and replace image, and I'll choose my portrait again. And I'll leave it at that. I'll show you another cool trick as well. If I go back into our shapes again and go back onto the rectangle tool, I can create kind of a grid of squares. So if I just click and drag whilst holding shift, just to keep it in perfect proportions. From this point, if I just tap the right arrow key on my keyboard, it generates another square. And if I long press on the right arrow key, I can create some distance between them. And now if I just tap once more, I can create more boxes. And the same goes for the down arrow key. So I'll just tap once, and then I'll long press and create some distance between them. And now I can let go, and now I have a kind of like grid of boxes. And maybe in each one of these, I can have a word or more pictures, you decide. Now, what if I wanted to scale these? Well, I might choose the move tool, and they're all still selected so I can move them around. What I could do is just drag from the corner here whilst holding shift like this. But if I wanted to scale them all in the place that they're in, I could head up here to the context toolbar. Right now I'm in the move tool, and you can see transform objects separately. This is also in the shapes tool here. So if I click on that, you see right at the top there, transform objects separately. So if I click on that, just one of them is selected. And again, I can click, hold shift, command, and just drag them in. And you see they all scale separately. Okay, let's move on to the next tool. In this section, I'll be covering the artistic text tool, shortcut is T, and the frame text tool, same shortcut. So if you want to start adding text to your document, you would use both of these tools. The first one, the artistic text tool, is more for big titles, headings, or small sentences. And if you wanted to start adding paragraphs, you would use the frame text tool. Okay, let's get started with the artistic text tool. I've selected it. Up there in the context toolbar, you'll see the usual options you have when working with text. You can change the font, the size, the color, the highlight color. You have your alignment options just here. And you have numbered list and bulleted list just here. So I'm going to go ahead and start typing something. But first I need to click and drag out until I get the font size that I want, and then let go. And I'll just type country here. Now I'll switch over to the move tool, and I can center it if I want just by moving it around. And you see snapping is enabled right now, that magnet at the top there, and it's basically snapping to this rectangle that you see. So I can position this wherever I want, and if I feel like the spacing is a little bit off, I could just tap once in there. And if you want to know how to kern a little bit, just hold down Option or Alt on the keyboard and press the left arrow key on your keyboard or the right arrow on the keyboard, so you can play around with that. Also, we can customize this further by converting it to curves. So I'll just tap on the move tool again, and from here, this is how I convert to curves. Hold down Command and press Return on the keyboard. And if you look in the layers panel, if I click on the drop down arrow, you can see each one of the letters is on its own layer. This is no longer typable, but now we can start customizing it a lot more. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in, and you see now that I have selected one of these layers, the U, it's automatically switched over to the node tool. So I can just use the marquee to drag over those nodes there. I'll hold shift, click, and drag up. So you see I can customize all of this a lot more. So I'll just drag these two out a little bit. Yeah, I'll finish it there. So very customizable. Okay, now I want to add a paragraph underneath. And I also want the second paragraph to be over here on this square. So I'm going to head back over here, click on it, and we will choose Frame Text Tool. So I'll click on that, and you see the icon has slightly changed. So what we do here is just click and drag to drag out our text frame and let go. And you can see it's blinking up there, waiting for me to start typing. So I can go ahead and just type hello. And I do actually want to fill this up. So I'll right click and just click Insert Filler Text because I only have so much time. So in goes the filler text. And one of the cool things about the Frame Text tool is I can grab these handles and reveal more and more text. Let's say if it's more than what's seen here, you can grab these handles and the text completely adapts to that bounding box. Okay, I said I wanted another paragraph here, so I will just draw out another frame. And I want the text here to continue over to here, so I will just select this one and that little arrow there, I'll click on it and then I'll choose the box I want it to link to. And now all of the text there will continue into this paragraph here. So that's the basics of the Artistic Text tool and the Frame Text tool. In this section, I'm going to be covering the Color Picker tool. The shortcut for this one is I on the keyboard. This one basically allows you to sample colors from anywhere on your document. So before I go ahead and select it, I'm just going to select this U here, and I want to use the green that's over there on the grass. So I'd go ahead and select the Color Picker tool. And you can see now I have this magnifying glass. This is where we will take our sample. And if you look up in the context toolbar, you can see we have a few options. One of them is apply to selection. So I have actually selected that U already. So when I go ahead and sample, it will automatically be applied to the U. And you can see magnification is on. This is this magnifier you see here. And the source is where do we take it from, globally or just the current layer that's selected. So I'll keep it on global, and of course you have radius. This is your sample area, so I'll just leave it on 0.1 to 1, but you can see all the other options there. So very simple to use. I just go ahead and select whichever green, and you see it's automatically applied it. I can use it on the blue and just keep clicking around like this. There we go. Maybe I'll keep it on the red from the lipstick. I'll just switch to the move tool and show you there is another way to do this. So I'll just select the Y and go up to the color tab, and you see that there, that's your color picker tool as well. So I can click and drag and take my sample from anywhere. Let's use a blue one this time and let go, and it's automatically applied it. So two ways to do the same thing. In this section, I'll be covering the Style Picker tool, and this one is a little bit similar to the Color Picker tool, but instead of sampling colors and applying them to something else, you'll be sampling things like the stroke, the fill, the opacity, layer effects, and more. So let's go ahead and select it. And the first thing I'm going to do is just zoom in and choose what I want to copy from. So this is my style picker. So here's the style I want. I will click once, and now I have loaded that style into this style picker. You can see it's actually quite full now. So this word here, this is a different text. It's a different color and a different opacity to the word above. And this is the word I'd like to apply it to. So quite simply, I could just tap it once and it applies all of those attributes to this word. If I press Command Z for a second and zoom in, I can actually be a little bit more selective. So I can click and just highlight just one letter. And now there's just one letter, has those attributes applied. And I'll just do the last letter here. There we go. And I'll do the last I. So if we go up to the context toolbar, you'll see it says attributes unload. That's because my style picker is loaded right now. You see, it's kind of full. I can unload it, and now I'm ready to take a sample of something else. So before you actually load it up, check what you actually want it to load. I've got all of them selected, so you can see stroke, fill, layer opacity, layer effects. Maybe you just want the fill to be copied over. So all that's up to you. That's the basics of this tool. The next couple of tools I'm going to show you are the View tool, which is H on the keyboard, and the Zoom tool, which is Z on the keyboard. And the View tool basically is a hand, and when you tap and hold down, it turns into a little fist, and basically you can grab and move around your document. Up in the context toolbar, you have a kind of zoom slider that you can zoom in and out with, and where it says units, you can basically change it to inches, and you see the ruler up there on the left and the top basically changes to inches units. And the next one is the zoom tool. And you can see it shows in the tooltip there are a bunch of shortcuts you can use with this. But the basics of it are you get this little magnifying glass, and when you tap once it zooms in, and you can keep tapping and it will keep zooming in. And if I just zoom out again, I can also hold down the Option or Alt key, and I can use a marquee to just zoom in around the tree, let go, and it just fills my frame with what I wanted to see. I generally don't use any of these tools because if you're like me and you have a trackpad, I'll just switch to the move tool. If you're like me and you have a trackpad, you can basically pinch in and out. You can put 2 fingers on the trackpad to move around like this, and it's pretty easy without those tools anyway. But luckily, this piece of software is very customizable, so perhaps I will remove these 2 so I have more space for other tools. In this section, I'll be covering live filter layers, and there's a couple of ways that you can access it. The first is go up to Pixel, and you can go to New Live Filter Layer, and they're all there laid out in different sections. The second way is underneath Layers. You'll see this hourglass kind of icon. It says Filters. Click on that, and you'll have all the same options. Now, I'll just kick things off with Depth of Field. And with this one, I will blur the outside of it, and it will gradually go into a nice focused image. And I can drag this around wherever I want. And with this pop-up panel here, I can click and drag that up, and you'll see the sides start to blur a little bit. And the cool thing about using these is it's all non-destructive. You can see it's just another layer in the layers panel, which I can delete anytime I want and go back to my original image. So I'm not worried about making mistakes here. I also have the vibrant slider, make everything look a little bit more vibrant, and clarity as well, which doesn't look good, so I'm just going to leave that off. You can play around with the opacity as well, and that's of this filter, and also the blend modes as I've shown you through this tutorial. If you don't like anything you've done, you can just press reset and try again, or you can completely delete it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to delete it and try a different one. So we'll go back down to the filters, and I will try a glitch filter. And there's plenty in here to play around with. It's quite fun actually, this one. So the glitch type, I will go to scramble, and I'll click and drag that out, and you can see it's completely scrambling the whole image. And watch what happens when I really drag it up. If I zoom in, you'll see it starts becoming a little bit transparent, which isn't great. So I'm just going to drag that down a little bit, and there's a way around this. Instead of applying this live glitch to the whole image, you might want to paint it onto specific areas that you actually want it to go onto. So I'm going to click on X, and you can see our glitch layer is down there. I basically want to invert this, so the picture is completely normal, and then I'll paint on this glitch filter. So how I do that is I either press Command I on the actual glitch layer, or I go up to Pixel, and then Invert here, and you can see the shortcut is here. So I'll just go back to the glitch and press Command I. And now we can see the image is completely normal again, but we also have this mask layer here. So now I can go over to the paintbrush, shortcut is B, and you can see up here there's white and then there's black. And you can press X on the keyboard just to switch between them really easily. So basically white reveals and black conceals. So I'll just paint this building away a little bit and see it looks a lot nicer. I can decide where I want this effect to be. But if I feel like I've messed up a little bit like here, I can just press X to switch to the black, and then I can start erasing that effect from where I don't want it to be. So maybe I will just take off a little bit here on the side, and just this bit is glitching out. And of course, right now it's quite soft. You can go ahead and change any of the settings up here in the context toolbar and be creative as you want. Okay, let's move on to the next section. In this section, I'm going to be covering layer masks, and these allow you to reveal or conceal parts of your image. And I want you to understand how they work. Just remember, black conceals, white reveals. So I have my JPEG here and it is selected, my background, and I'm going to go down and click on this, mask layer. When I click it, you can see we now have a layer mask inside of our background. And before I do anything, I just want to show you the color of it. So I'm going to hold down Option or Alt on the keyboard and click on the layer mask. you can see everything is white. And like I said earlier, white reveals, black conceals. So if I go ahead and hold down Option or Alt on the keyboard and click it again, you can see that the whole image is revealed because obviously the mask layer is white. Now, if we switch over to the brush tool, shortcut is B, I'm going to select it. You can see up here in the color, I have a black and a white color. Right now it's currently on black. And as I hover over the image, I'll just make the brush bigger with the right bracket key. You can see when I'm using the black brush, it's concealing part of an image, basically erasing it. I haven't actually pressed anything down yet, so I'll just click and drag. And you can see I'm kind of erasing the background this way. And if I switch to white, a shortcut for this is just to press X on the keyboard, and it switches over to white. So you can see now it's revealing parts that I've previously deleted. And I can paint everything back in again. So all of this is non-destructive. Anything I do here, I can undo very easily just by painting in or painting out whatever I've done. So I'll just switch back to black by pressing X, and I'll just erase a little bit using the black brush, and I'll go back to the layer mask and I'll hold down Option or Alt and click. And now you can see the parts that I'm concealing are actually black. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, I'll go back to the layer mask again, hold Option or Alt on the keyboard and click. And I'll delete the layer mask. So to make it even more easy to understand, I will go ahead and do the same thing again. I'll click on the layer mask, and I'll click on Option or Alt on the keyboard and click on the layer mask. Of course, it is white right now, but we can actually invert this so it's black, meaning that we can paint to reveal that man in the image. So how we do that is we go up to Pixel, and then we go to Invert. The shortcut for this one is Command I. So when I click on that, you can see everything is black now. So if I go back to the layer mask and click Option, Alt, and select, you can see everything is transparent. So if I go back to the brush tool and I choose the white, you see now I can paint to reveal. So I'm using white to reveal. Black conceals, white reveals, and the background of this mask is completely black. That's easy enough, isn't it? Let me go ahead and delete that mask. Okay, I'll make another example using the layer mask, but we'll include pixel selection as well. And this may not be the correct way to do it, but it will help you to understand layer masking and making your selections. So I'm going to go down again, create another layer mask. Now I'm going to select the actual JPEG, the photo here, and I'll click on the selection brush tool so we can make our selection just of the man. So I've selected that one, it's just this one here, and I'll just paint in my selection. I won't spend too much time doing it. I'll just drag that around, and I'll just zoom in a little bit and just drag this around like that. If you make a slight mistake, just hold down the Alt or Option button, and then you can paint again to erase part of the selection. Okay, great. I've made my selection. I can go ahead and click on the layer mask, and again, we can use the paintbrush tool. So I've selected that, and you see right now I'm using the black color. So that's going to conceal. I'll just make it slightly bigger. And actually, I do not want to paint out the man like this. I'll press Command Z. I actually want to paint the background out. So just like we inverted the layer mask, we can also invert the pixel selection. A couple of ways to do this. Go up to Pixel, Pixel Selection, and then invert. That's one way to do it. Or you could use the simple shortcut, Shift, Command, and I. So I'll just click this now. And now you can see we have marching ants on the outside, and my black brush is now going to erase the background, as you can see here. And something else I haven't mentioned, that we're using black and white, but if you use maybe a gray, it will partially erase the background, as you can see. Maybe that's something you want, but just so you know, that's what happens. So I'll drag it back to black, I'll make the brush bigger, and I'll just try to erase everything in the background. You see, I don't have to worry too much. It's all non-destructive and it's not affecting the man because we've inverted that pixel selection. To deselect those marching ants, just press Command D. And right now, everything looks kind of okay, doesn't it? But what if we try to look at it with a black background, see if we've missed anything? Well, I'm going to go ahead on the left-hand side, click on the rectangle tool, and I'll just click and drag out a black rectangle. In the layers panel, I'll just drag that to the bottom, and I'll zoom in so we can have a look. So I completely missed this part here, and the arm looks a little bit jagged because we haven't really refined our selection. And down here is like this white outline, which I don't want as well. So I could, if I wanted to, click on the layer mask again, click back on our paintbrush, and I could zoom in and try and make my brush a little bit smaller. Right now it's kind of soft. Maybe I'd want to make it harder in the context toolbar up there. And I could try to start erasing part of it, but it's a little bit difficult and I could potentially make a mistake like that. So I'd have to switch back to the white brush here and just paint in that to reveal it. So that would be quite painstaking, wouldn't it? Switching between these colors, trying to get it right. Yeah, not great. Okay, let's delete all of that and I'll show you a better way. This time I'm not going to start off by creating a layer mask. I'm just simply going to choose the selection brush tool and start making my selection of the man here. So I'll just paint around, changing the brush size as I go. If it's a little bit too strong, I'll go up and just paint around. And I'll try and get a fairly good selection here. And any mistakes I make, I can always paint back out my selection by just holding Option or Alt on the keyboard and painting it in like this. And down here, I don't need such a big brush, so I will just go down and start painting in like that. Oops, I've messed up. I hold down Option Alt and I click, and maybe I'll just paint a little bit more there and then go ahead and get those sides there. Let's have a look around. Anything else? That finger's kind of missing, so I'll just paint a little bit in there. I've messed that one up, so I'll just make the brush size smaller. Hold down Option Alt on the keyboard. And I think I'm pretty much done here. Yeah, okay, so from this point, I will refine my selection. It looks good now, but maybe it's not that great. So let's go ahead and click on Refine. And you can see the masked area is now all in red, so we can go around and see if there's anything missing. Right now, everything looks okay, doesn't it? But to really know, we can use this panel here, this Refine selection panel, and we can click on Preview and then Black Matte. And just like I was doing before, it's basically put a black background there so we can see if anything's popping up. So that bit there, I'm not too happy with that. Maybe up here near the finger, that bit I do not like, but overall it's done a pretty good job. So this is the part I do not like. It's a little bit jagged and that's not how the arm usually looks. So adjustment brush underneath, it says matte. That one's selected right now. This one is good for outlines, so I can just click and drag to make sure I'm selecting part of the arm and part of the background and let go. And it's kind of smoothed it off fairly nicely there. Let's try and use it down here as well. Just here, I'll just click and drag, see if it works. It doesn't really work too much there, so I want to erase part of that. So the foreground over here, this would be the man. And the background would be the background I want to paint away. So I've chosen the background here, and I'll just click and drag in a little bit. I don't have to go all the way and let go. And it kind of creeps forward as you paint. Hopefully you can see that. If you go a little bit too far into the man, you can click on foreground and paint in the man slightly, and it will creep back the other way. So let's go up here and see if there's anything else. So this one here, I will click on background. I'll make my brush slightly smaller. There we go, I'm painting it out. This is the border width, so if I click and drag this slider, you see I can choose the amount of border that I want to include or not include, so maybe I'll drag it down to 4%, let it rework out everything, or maybe I can drag it out. I'll just drag it out so you can see what it does. I've dragged it up and now it's including other things that I do not want, so I'll drag it back down to around 5%. And you see it's gotten rid of that there. You might also be noticing that there's kind of this white outline everywhere. And if we use the matte brush on here, let me make that slightly bigger. If we use the matte brush here, let's see if it works. No, it's not working. Basically, that's your color contamination from the background on the outline there. So we have a button for that. You see here, color decontamination. If I click on that, it completely removes that problem from the side there. So everything's kind of looking good now, isn't it? Also, I'll just show you smooth. If I drag this all the way up, I'll show you what it does. It basically smooths your selection there. And same thing with feather. It basically feathers the edges a little bit more. But you can see we don't want that, do we? So I'll just drag that back down. And lastly, ramp. If I ramp that up all the way, you can see it basically ramps out and includes more of the selection outside. I'll drag it all the way down. You see it's gone in a little bit too far. So I'll just drag it back to 0% like it was before. And we're pretty much done here. There's no white outline around the man. And output, how do I want it outputted? Do I want a new decontaminated layer, or do I want a new decontaminated layer with a mask as well? If I choose this, you'll see what happens. I'll just click apply. And you see we just have a pixel layer, there's no mask involved. If I chose the pixel layer with mask, I would have had a mask and I can continue to paint in or out portions of it. But that's worked pretty well. And if I go ahead and create my black background now, just like I did before, and place it behind, you'll see some of the problems are no longer there with the jagged arm. This part down here is kind of blending in a little bit nicely with the background. And everything looks pretty good. Okay, so I'll make a few changes to the background here, and maybe I'll apply a different filter on the man. So I'll just change the color of this to something a bit more bright. And I'll go ahead and select the man, and I'll go over here, the easy way to use the live filter brush tool. So I'll click on that, and scramble is selected under glitch, and I can just start painting in that effect. And if I wanted to make changes to that, I could go into the layers panel, click on the glitch filter, and I could make changes to it however I wish. Okay, that's how to remove a background and add a live filter. Let's move on. In this section, I'm going to be covering the stock tab, and basically you can connect straight to a stock photography or stock image site directly in Affinity. So over on the left-hand side, you'll see the stock tab here. You can click on it and you have a couple of options. You have Pexels or Pixabay. I'll stick with Pixabay and I'll uncheck vector because I just want a photo. So I'll start off by typing out cat, and then I want a PNG, so I'll type in PNG because I want a transparent background of a cat. I'll press return and see what's available. So you see you can scroll through here and choose what you want. I'll just take this top cat here. I'll click and drag it onto my document. So it's come out pretty big, so I'll just scale it down slightly. And I'll drag it into the position I want it to be in. And I want to send it to the back in the layer stack. So I'll just switch over to layers so you can see. And I'll just use a shortcut this time. I'll press Command and left bracket key to send it down one layer in the layer stack. You can see it's underneath the man now, and I can still continue to move it around. Okay, back over to the stock tab. This time I want an owl, but I want a vector owl. So I'll just type in owl and I'll click on the vector button there. And now all of these are vectors, and I can just click and drag them onto my document. Okay, it's hidden behind, so I'll just drag it out here and scale it up a little bit, and I'll click and rotate it slightly so it's kind of poking over my shoulder. And lastly, I just want to add a sun at the top there. So again, I will go back to the stock tab and type out sun, press return. I'll use this one here, click, drag, and let go. It's quite small, this one, so I'll just drag it up and place it around here. Okay, so you can see how easy it is to use the stock tab when creating your designs. In this section, I'm going to be covering layer effects, where basically you'll be able to apply a bunch of different effects to your image, whether it's a vector or a photo. So I'm going to go ahead and select the man here because I want to apply the effect to this person, and I'll go down and click on the effects icon just here. Once I've clicked it, this panel appears, and these are all our options here. Now, the layer effects really work much better on vector items, especially with like the bevel emboss and 3D, but it does have some use cases on photos like this. But I'll just show you bevel and emboss. I'll check it, and I'll click on inner. It's different types here, and I can just drag this radius up and down, and if I zoom in, you can kind of see what it's doing there. I'll switch over to outer and click and drag this. There's loads of options. You can change the direction of it, the profile, all of that. But it doesn't look too great, so I'm going to uncheck that, and I'll click on outline, and I'll check that one. So it's added a nice yellow outline there. I can choose how thick I want it here in the radius, and I can choose the color here as well. Okay, I'll uncheck that. For this photo, I want to add an outer glow. So I'll go over to outer glow, check that one, and there it is, a nice white outer glow. I can bring up the radius here and also the intensity a little bit. And in fact, I'll leave it on white. You can also change the blend mode as well, so you can cycle through these. But again, I'll just leave it as it is. And one thing to note, right now, if you scaled this man down like this, it won't really scale with the object or the man. You see it's a lot thicker than it was when it was bigger. So there is a solution for this. You can go ahead and select scale with object. So I'll select that, and now I'll scale it back down again. And you see it basically looks exactly as it did when it was larger. So make sure you check that one to keep that layer effect looking exactly the same, no matter how much you scale it. And I'll press close. And if you look in the layers panel, it now has an effects applied to it, a layer effect. You can actually apply that same effect to any other image you have. So you see the owl there. I can click on the effect, just drag it down, and it basically kind of pastes it onto whatever you drag it onto. So now it's on the owl. If you no longer want them anymore, let's say on the owl, I'll just click on that effects button there, and I can uncheck that and press close. Okay, that's layer effects. In this section, I'll be covering the develop mode. So for you photographers who shoot in RAW, this one's for you. The develop mode is basically where you process RAW photos first before heading to Pixel Studio. Here you can non-destructively adjust the exposure, color, and tone using the full sensor data. So fix the image here before moving on to more detailed edits. So when you first open a RAW photo in Affinity, it will open up in develop mode, and you can see some of the tools and panels look slightly different, and they're all geared to making these initial adjustments. But just to note, by default, Affinity applies automatic adjustments in develop mode. So you can disable these in the cog item to start with a neutral RAW image. So just up here is the cog I was talking about, Develop Assistant Settings. You can click on that, and this panel opens up. And there we go, noise reduction, it says apply color reduction, take no action. Sharpening, you can go take no action. And tonal curve, it says apply tonal curve, I will take no action. And I can click on close. Now, remember what this looks like now, because now we have to close Affinity and reopen it so we can open our RAW photo without those adjustments applied. So I'm going to press cancel, and I'm going to click yes. And I'm going to open up that same one again. And there it is. It looks a lot different, doesn't it? Now we have full control. Okay, to kick things off, let's have a look at the histogram over here. This strange image. It's basically a visual representation of your photo's tonal values, showing how shadows, midtones, and highlights are distributed. So on the left-hand side, this is your shadows. On the right-hand side, that's your highlights, and in the middle, you have your midtones. So right now, it looks fairly balanced, doesn't it? But if I click and drag the exposure down like this, you can see obviously the photo's getting darker, but we're also losing detail. And you can see that by how it's clipped on the left-hand side here. And if I click and drag the exposure the complete opposite direction, you can visually see I'm losing detail here. And it's also represented in the histogram on the right-hand side in the highlights. So you want to get a nice balanced image by just clicking and dragging it so nothing is peaking on the left or right unless you really actually want it to. In order to reset anything that you've changed here, like the exposure slider, you just double tap on the little dot and it will bring it back to your image's original exposure. Okay, let's make some basic edits and go through some of these sliders so we understand what they do. Starting with exposure, this one makes the whole image lighter or darker, with the highlights changing faster than the shadows. So as I'm hovering around the middle here, I'll just drag it up and you can see the highlights are starting to clip. Look up in the histogram, you can see it clipping slightly there, and we're losing a lot of detail to the highlights. And I'll just drag it back down to the middle there. And again, to reset it, I just double tap on that little circle and it's back to 0. Okay, the next one is brightness. This one mainly adjusts the midtones, making the image appear lighter or darker without heavily affecting highlights or shadows. So you can see as I drag it totally to the left, it's not as dark as it was under the exposure slider, and I can drag it totally to the right, and it's also not as bright as it was under the exposure slider, because it's just affecting the midtones. I'll just drag that up slightly. And the next one is black point, and this one controls how deep the blacks are by deciding where the shadows turn completely black. So watch as I drag it up. It only seems to be affecting the darkest areas of the image. And I'll drag it the other way and it kind of washes those blacks out a little bit. Again, double tap to reset. The next options I want to show you are shadows and highlights. So if we go back up to brightness, you see up here in the histogram, it's kind of clipping slightly. I'm going to whack that up a lot, okay? So a little bit's being clipped over there. So with shadows and highlights, you can kind of recover it a little bit. So the highlights down here recovers or brightens very bright areas. And right now we want to recover some. So I'm going to click and drag it down. And you see it's no longer being clipped in the histogram. And the shadow slider brightens or darkens dark areas. So I'm going to click on that and drag it up. And you can see that's a little bit too bright on the shadows, isn't it? And I can drag it completely the opposite direction. And that's a little bit too dark. Actually, I'll just leave it where it is because I'm pretty happy with that. Next up is contrast. And this one increases or reduces the difference between dark and light areas. So I'll drag it up and you can see what it's doing. The darker areas are slightly darker and the lighter areas are slightly lighter. It's increasing the contrast. And if I drag it the other way, we have very little contrast. And look up in the histogram, it's all there in the midtones. So I'll just drag that up a little bit, 5%. Next up is saturation and vibrance. So the saturation one basically increases or decreases all colors equally. So I can click on it and just drag it all the way down. And you see now it's kind of like a black and white image. And if I drag it all the way up to the top, it's a super saturated image here. So I'm just going to bring it down because I only want to increase it ever so slightly. And we have vibrance. This one boosts muted colors more than stronger ones. So if I click and drag it up, you see it doesn't have as much of an effect because it's just handling those muted colors. So I could just drag that up ever so slightly again, and I'll leave it there. And you also have clarity. This one adds or removes mid-tone detail and edge contrast. So if I click and drag it up, I'll just whack it up all the way to the edge there on the right-hand side. You can see that looks like a little bit too much. And if I drag it all the way down, everything looks kind of smoothed out, doesn't it? Let me zoom into the bird so you can see. I'll drag it up from here, and you can see it gradually increases that mid-tone detail. So I'll zoom out just so I can get a good look of how I want it. Just a small amount, 3%. Okay, maybe 1%. And of course, down here we have our white balance. So the temperature makes the image warmer, which is yellow, or cooler, which is more blue. So you can decide by clicking and dragging that, how cool you want it or how warm you want it. So I'll just kind of eyeball it. Yeah, okay, around about here. And of course you have tint, which shifts the colors more towards green or pink. And right now it's on 14, as you can see. I'll just double tap and it brings it back to the 14%. Okay, I've edited it slightly and I want to see what it looked like before so I can see how much of a change I've made to the image with the basic adjustments. So I can go up to the context toolbar and click on split view. And you can see on the right hand side, this is your before. And the left-hand side, that's your after. So you can just drag this slider around. There's also an option to see it in mirror view. So you just click on that. You can see side by side the changes. Okay, I'll select single view again. If we head on over to the Tones tab here, inside we have Curves. And Curves lets you precisely control brightness and contrast by adjusting shadows, midtones, and highlights independently. So much like the histogram up here, on the left-hand side are your shadows, in the middle here is your midtones, and on the right-hand side are your highlights. And you have this diagonal line here that you can manipulate. So I'll start off by clicking and dragging this across the top one. So you can see I'm kind of increasing the highlights and it's clipping and I'm losing data here. And if I drag it down on the other side, it's decreasing the highlights. And same for the other side. If I drag this side up, I'm brightening the shadows and kind of washing out all of those blacks. And the opposite way, I'm basically increasing the shadows and crushing the blacks and losing all of that data as you see in the histogram. And I can also jot down points on this diagonal line. So if I click here and I just drag out, you can see I can increase the midtones here. And you can see this kind of curve that affects your shadows and highlights too. So you can actually jot down a few of these points here. So maybe up here you can increase the highlights a little bit, and on this little node or circle you can decrease the shadows a little bit, and it's a little bit smoother. This is kind of like a mini S curve here, and I can obviously do it the other way around where I can decrease the shadows here, kind of wash out those darker areas, and I can bring down the highlights. So play around with this to get the look that you want. And you can even add a third one in here just to brighten up those midtones a little bit more. And I'll leave it at that for now. Underneath, we also have black and white. So when I go ahead and click on this, the whole thing turns to black and white. And I can still play around with the colors here to adjust the tones. So I'll just click and play around with each individual piece. Remember, the greens was the grass and all that, so I can bring that down or up if I want. Same thing with the blues. So you can end up with quite a nice looking black and white photo. Okay, I'll uncheck that one. And underneath is split toning. And for this one, basically you'll choose a color for the highlights and you'll choose a color for the shadows. So if I just choose, maybe for the highlights, I'll choose some kind of like orange, and for the shadows, I'll choose some kind of blue. And then I can just drag up the highlight saturation. You can see it's going a little bit orangey there. And I can drag up the shadow saturation. You can see all the shadows are kind of turning a little bit blue. And then I can play around with the balance to see what looks best. Okay, let me uncheck that one. Okay, now let's head over to the details panel here. And this one basically sharpens edges to add clarity to your compositions. That's exactly what the Affinity website says anyway. So I'll just zoom into these feathers. And what we'll do first is click and drag up the radius. And the radius controls the number of pixels affected around the existing light pixels. But basically you can't see any changes happening here. The real change is when you start clicking and dragging the amount slider. And this is the one that will control how much contrast is added. So watch now, it looks a little bit blurry. I'll click and drag it up and we can see these details start to be revealed. I'll just drag it all the way up. You see it looks pretty sharp now, maybe a bit too much. So I'll just drag it down ever so slightly and I'll leave it around here. That looks a lot better. And just underneath detail refinement, you also have noise reduction. And this image doesn't actually have any noise, but if it did, I could reduce the noise by clicking on this and dragging up the luminance or color and messing around with these sliders. And directly underneath that, you can actually add noise. So I can click on that and just increase the intensity here. You see I have a couple of options, Gaussian and color. So I'll just switch between them so you can see what they do. I'm not going to add any noise to this, so I'll just uncheck it. I'll just run through a couple more of these tabs. So you've got lens here, which adds lens correction. You see there's the lens I took this photo on, 85mm f1.8. And if I uncheck it, you can see it slightly changes. So it adds that correction. If yours doesn't show up, you can just go ahead and do it manually here. So if your subject is slightly warped because you took it on a certain kind of lens, you can go ahead and make corrections like that. Okay, I'll just press reset. And underneath you have a few more: chromatic aberration, defringe, remove lens vignette. So that darker area around the side, if you go ahead and click that, it will brighten it slightly, as you can see. And we'll head on over to masks. And this is similar to what I was showing you earlier with layer masks, etc. So you've got a couple of options down here. The first one is add gradient mask. If I click on that, I can just click and drag down. And now I can go back to basic and I can make any changes I want. See, it's just affecting the top there and it's a gradient and it basically falls off at the bottom there. So it's non-destructive, so I can go back to masks and I can select it and just click on the bin. And the next one is add brush mask. So I can click on that. And now maybe I can brush around this pheasant here in a really bad way, just like that. I can go back again and increase the brightness a little bit or decrease it. But I usually do all of this when I get into the Pixel Studio. So I can go back to masks and delete. Okay, we're almost done here, but we have a few tools on the left-hand side. And of course, we have to use the crop tool. Shortcut is C on the keyboard. When I go ahead and select it, you can see we have the same options as we did when we were in the Pixel Studio. So right now it's on unconstrained. We've got original ratio, custom ratio, and resample. We also have some presets on the side here to crop to. And over here, we also have straighten. So I can click on that and I can't actually tell what's straight here, but I can just drag that there, straightened it out a little bit, and I'll just use a preset. So I'll go down here, I'll make it cinematic, 16:9, and I'll just drag the edges in like this. Maybe I'll keep it somewhere around here. Of course, you can play around with the grids. Right now it's on thirds grid. And to action this, I'll just press return on the keyboard. Okay, that's not a great crop, but you see this little leg here? I could get rid of that in the Pixel Studio later, but first of all, I can go through some of these other tools. So the view tool and the zoom tool, we know what they do, as I showed you earlier. And the white balance tool, basically with this one, you can click on it and then you can take a sample from somewhere, maybe like the white beak over there. And it kind of, look, I'll just tap a couple of times. So you can sample from around the image to get your white balance. I'll press Command Z a couple of times. And you have the red eye removal tool. Well, this pheasant definitely has a red eye. I'm going to use it actually. Click, drag, and let's see if it gets rid of any red. Yes, it did get rid of his red eye. Okay, Command Z to go back. Blemish removal tool. I don't really have any of that, but I showed you that earlier on. And the mask paint tool and the mask erase tool are basically the same mask paint tool as I showed you over there. Same thing for the mask gradient. It's the same mask gradient that's in your masks just down here. Okay, and once you're all done, you can go ahead and click on Develop. And I'll just switch over to Pixel Studio and I can start editing. Perhaps I want to take out that piece there. I can go ahead and do that. But like I said, that was a completely non-destructive edit. So any point I can go back to Develop and I can make any of the changes that I want. In this section, I'm going to be covering pattern layers. And basically you can duplicate a pattern, a design, across your document very quickly. So head on up to Pixel and then click on New Pattern Layer. And this little pop-up box appears, and I'll just set this to 200 pixels on width and height, and I'll press OK. Now I've got this little box here. So the next thing I'm going to do is click on the paintbrush tool. And now I'm going to go in and I'm just going to start painting like this. And you see it's repeating across. I can even draw outside of the box if I wish, and then come back down on myself. Maybe I'll just kind of leave it there. And you see it's repeated across my whole document. And if I click on the move tool, I can move that around. I can scale it up. I can scale it down. And I can even rotate it as well. So that's one way of using pattern layers. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And I'm going to bring on our portrait that we were using earlier. I'm just going to drag that on there, scale it down a little bit. And from here, I will go back up to Pixel. And then I will go on New Pattern Layer from Selection. So obviously the image is my selection. So I'm going to click it. And now you see it's just repeated along there. So I can scale this in. And I can get infinite duplications of this face. Pretty cool, right? Moving on. In this section, I just want to briefly describe the difference between an image layer and a pixel layer. So I have this JPEG that I'm going to drag onto the document. By the way, the document size is 4K. So I'm going to drag this on, and you can see the image is obviously a lot larger. And if we look up in the top context toolbar, you can see the original size is over 7,000 by 5,000 pixels. So it's quite a big image, isn't it? I'm just going to scale that down to quite a small size. And if you look in the layers panel, you can see it says image. That means it's an image layer. And the cool thing with image layers is they retain their data, their quality. So as long as you don't make any destructive edits to your image, you'll be able to scale it up to its original size and no quality will be lost. So let's go and test that out. So I've scaled it down to quite a small size here. And I'm going to make a duplicate right over here. And with this one, I'm going to make a destructive edit to it. So I'll head on over to the In-Painting Brush tool. I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to go in and just brush out one of these seagulls. And now that I've made that edit, you can see it looks a little bit pixelated now, doesn't it? Basically, at the time you made the destructive edit, if you scaled it down, it will now be locked in that quality and you won't be able to retrieve it unless you press Command Z. So let me just try scale it up a little bit now. You can see that it's very pixelated and that's not great. So do be careful about editing your image layer at a scaled down size. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And with this one here, I'm going to make a non-destructive edit to it. So I have it selected. I'm going to go over to the adjustment brush tool and I'll just make that brush size a little bit smaller. Right now it's on split toning. I'm just going to draw something like that. Split toning is on. Okay, that's enough. That's a non-destructive edit. So I can now click on the Move tool and I can scale that up. And you can see that non-destructive edit is not scaling with it. So I'll just press Command Z and you see there it is in the layers panel. I can just click and drag it onto it. Now I'll select the image again and I can drag it up and now it scales with the image. And I'll just drag it up really big and you can see there's no loss in quality on this image. In the layers panel, it's still an image layer, not a pixel layer. So something to note when you're working with raster images. Moving on. Okay, in this section, I'm going to briefly cover exporting your finished photo or digital art. So once you're done, you can head on up to File and then Export and then click Export here. You'll get this panel appear and on the left-hand side, you can decide the file format you want. So you've got JPEG and PNG, and you see as I click on each of them, there's a bunch of presets that are already set up. So you can decide from one of them, click on that one there, for instance, and on the right-hand side, these are all the settings. So of course they are already set up, but you can make any amendments to this as you please. And it will give you an estimated file size so you know what to expect when you click on export. And if you're working with many layers here, maybe some of them are hidden, maybe some of them aren't, you can decide whether you want to export those hidden layers with the document. And you can cycle through and toggle on or off, whatever you want. And right now it says ask for location. So when I go ahead and click export, it will ask me, do you want to save it to the desktop, to a certain file somewhere? So this is a good one to keep it on. Also, you have export to Canva or alongside document. So when you're ready, just go ahead and click export and you are done. Okay, that marks the end of the tutorial. I hope you found it useful. If you did, leave me a comment in the comment section below. If you have any questions, you can also leave them there. If you have not subscribed already, go ahead and click on subscribe and you'll see when my next video is released. Until next time, take it easy.